Chapter 991. Being ridiculed by Dustless like this, Zaraki's killing intent was even more intense. You have to be careful, the consequences of his anger will be serious. The pink-haired little lowly jumped off Zaraki's shoulder and reminded Dustless in a friendly manner, and immediately left the field. Perhaps because she felt that it was too dangerous, she ran for hundreds of meters before stopping. If you don't come, I'll come first. As his voice fell, the ground trembled. Looking up, Zaraki raised his Zanpakuto full of sawtooth and rushed over like a monster. His whole body released a high-density golden Ryatsu. The air was extremely hot, and the Ryatsu in the air burned strangely, turning into a sea of fire. The scene was particularly spectacular. You don't even know Shuinpa. Seeing this, Dustless chuckled, then shook his head. This guy's powerful Ryatsu is really a waste. Because Zaraki only knows how to cut people, he doesn't know other Shinigami's fighting skills. Not to mention Kido's lethality skills. This kid doesn't even know the most basic Shuinpa. Whoosh! The biting cold wind came head-on, and at the same time, the sky darkened. Dustless was stunned. A wisp of sawtooth edge fell toward his head. Look, the unlucky captain is going to die. Our 11th division is really unlucky. The new captain just took office, and now we have to hold a funeral. I'm afraid the team fee is not enough. Idiot, it's not good for us if he dies. Look at Zaraki, he's a fighting maniac, a typical madman. After becoming the captain, he will cut us like vegetables. This captain is still better. That's right, Zaraki is a complete battle maniac. The members of the 11th division who were hiding around whispered, comparing Dustless and Zaraki, they preferred the former. Just when everyone thought that Dustless's body was going to be separated, the sawtooth Zanpakuto was stopped by someone. What? It looks scary, it turns out to be so fragile. A contemptuous and disdainful voice sounded out of thin air. Looking at the source, everyone was instantly petrified. How is this possible? You can actually catch my attack with one hand. Unbelievable, with a trembling voice, came out from Zaraki's throat. At this moment, his face was lost, and his rough old face was full of astonishment. Following his line of sight, he saw Dustless's left hand grabbing the Zanpakuto with ease. You are too weak. It's impossible for you to hurt me with your current strength. Also, I won't be as merciful as the head captain. In order to deter some people with ulterior motives, I can only release your blood to wake them up, Zaraki. His cold eyes flashed with a touch of hostility. Then, the first-generation ghost blade in his right arm vibrated. A ripple appeared in the void and everything that came into contact with this cold light instantly shattered. Zaraki was no exception. Pucci! On his chest, there was a long and narrow wound that was visible to the naked eye. Due to the depth of the wound, one could clearly see the glaring white bone. The piercing pain engulfed his entire body like a tide, spreading to his nerve endings. The pain was unbearable. Zaraki's expression was sluggish. He didn't expect himself to be so fragile. Just a face-to-face, he was instantly injured. Then this boundless disbelief turned into excitement and laughter. Ha ha ha, this feeling, it's really nostalgic. His eyes widened, and countless dense blood vessels appeared in his white eye sockets. Zaraki's hostility skyrocketed, and his momentum also skyrocketed. Even his Ryatsu increased several times, and his eyes became more ferocious. Come, let's have a good fight. Make sure it's a good fight. Who is interested in playing this little game with you? Without waiting for Zaraki's voice to fall, Dustless mercilessly interrupted him. His face was indifferent, and the dazzling light gathered at the soles of his feet. He said, "This is not a fair fight, it's just a boring one-sided annihilation, that's all." Then Dustless jumped up, and the light also blasted toward Zaraki's face. Light speed kick. Zaraki was shocked when he saw this, but after many years of fighting, and with the training of the captain, he had already developed an extraordinary fighting heart. Whether it was consciousness, experience, or reaction speed, he was one of the top existences. He immediately picked up his Zanpakuto to block his face. Boom! Even if he blocked the attack of the light, this powerful force was beyond his imagination, and Zaraki disappeared instantly. Kakaka, the wall 100 meters away collapsed and burst into pieces, and a tall man with wounds, faintly burned, and a strange smell was lying in it. He shouldn't die so easily. Although the slash and light speed kick were strong, they shouldn't have hurt his life. After a few seconds of silence, Zaraki was still lying on the ground motionless. Dustless whispered. He still needs this qualified fighter. Dustless still has other things to deal with after giving the mission of the 11th Division to Zaraki. Boom boom boom. After a few breaths of time, a vast and majestic Ryatsu suddenly descended, and the particles on the ground trembled, and the entire 11th Division also swayed, as if there was a terrible earthquake. Even because the Ryatsu was too strong, everyone couldn't move an inch. Everyone was very depressed, and breathing was 100 times more difficult than before. Undying cockroach, but this is also good. I can use you to test the skills I recently learned. Dustless was not surprised when he saw this, and a Ryatsu that was not inferior to Zaraki's also erupted. Chapter 992. The chakra of physical strength was raging, and Dustless was not to be outdone. He desperately broke out without any cost. TSK. This surging Ryatsu is really enviable. Perceiving the content of Zaraki's Ryatsu, Dustless said enviously, this is still under the condition of wearing an eye mask and a lot of restraining Ryatsu props. How terrifying would it be if all of them were removed? Thinking of this, Dustless was filled with emotion. If Zaraki can also solve Shurkai Zanpakuto in the future, or even Bankai, his strength will increase exponentially. Ha ha ha! A burst of arrogant laughter spread throughout Soul Society along with the influence of Ryatsu. That arrogant laughter made everyone frown. Although they were dissatisfied, they remained silent. This terrifying Ryatsu, it is undeniable that he indeed has the capital to look down on the heroes. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the raging storm came head-on, and the endless impact caused by Ryatsu shook the world. The dull sound was like thunder, and Zaraki also moved with the momentum. Boom boom boom. His speed was extremely fast, and his momentum was fierce. Zaraki's whole body was as heavy as a mountain, and the earth was trembling. The shocking scene left an unforgettable impression in the hearts of the onlookers. Regardless of victory or defeat, the name of Zaraki will be passed down in Soul Society in the future. Bakudo 63-6 Light Prison. 6 huge golden light belts came from all directions, binding Zaraki so that he couldn't move his body. His beast-like eyes suddenly dimmed a lot. It shouldn't be so easy to deal with him. Thinking of Zaraki's invincible Ryatsu, Dustless didn't hesitate to use other moves. Heido 63-6 Thunder Roar Cannon. A golden rainbow swept across the sky, leaving a straight ray of light in the cloudless sky, whistling straight toward Zaraki. TSK, I didn't expect this guy to be so strong. It seems that I have to go all out to resist him. Zaraki's face was a bit ugly and even horrified. With just a few simple moves, Dustless forced him to go all out to deal with it. Especially the number 63 Heido on his waist, it seemed to be much stronger than the others. Without hesitation, he took off the blindfold, and the amount of spiritual pressure increased again. What kind of monster is this kid? How can he have so much spiritual pressure? With his eyes wide open, Dustless was very surprised. He could clearly see the golden Ryatsu burning around Zaraki's body. It was extremely rough and powerful, like a golden flame, and everything that was affected by the Ryatsu would be turned into ashes. A skull completely formed by super strong Ryatsu covered Zaraki like a real entity. It was extremely hot, and white steam rose from the air. The Rokuzen light prison that was binding Zaraki was dismembered in an instant, and the thunder roar cannon that was rushing towards him was burned to ashes before it could even touch him. It's really not simple. This kind of almost solid high-strength Ryatsu defense can even compete with number 96 Heido cremation. Its power is indeed not to be underestimated. Perceiving the strength of the Ryatsu defense, Dustless nodded in surprise. In the future, Zaraki would use this move to fight against the 8th generation sword Hakamaru. In fact, this kind of rough skill was very simple. It used a large amount of Ryatsu to form a defensive aura shield. Its function was similar to Kensusunu, both of which were extremely energy-consuming skills. It could even be regarded as a mini Kensusunu. That's it, you are the third person I have dealt with so far. Unlike before, Zaraki changed to a two-handed sword, and the whole momentum was obviously different. It was completely different from before. A burst of invincible sword intent locked on Dustless. This guy. Dustless was slightly stunned. He raised his arm and found that his skin began to ooze red blood. He looked up subconsciously and saw a huge sword light covering him. Are you kidding me? What kind of monster is this guy? Look, All the Ryatsu in the atmosphere is burning, and the 11th Division has turned into a sea of fire. Run, idiot! The members of the 11th Division scrambled to escape. In a battle between monsters, they were just insignificant cannon fodder. They would be killed in seconds if they ran to the center of the battle. Around Dustless, not only the ground, but the sky turned fiery red and burned without warning, blocking Dustless's retreat. The places with Ryatsu were set on fire, and the momentum seemed to spread throughout the entire Soul Society. Farewell, former captain. As Zaraki's words fell, the Zanpakuto in his hand also fell, and the huge sword light stopped in the void also fell. Boom boom boom, the sharp and hot Ryatsu fell from the sky, and Dustless's whole body was swallowed without a trace, as if it was evaporated by the hot temperature, and the Ryatsu also disappeared. Ka ka ka! A ferocious and thick crack appeared on the ground that was hit by the heavy blow. The crack stretched for several kilometers and almost destroyed the entire 11th Division's building in seconds. Well, the Ryatsu disappeared, which means that guy is dead. Carrying the sawtooth Zanpakuto on his shoulder, Zaraki breathed a sigh of relief. When he was about to leave, his body suddenly felt a sharp pain. Puchi! A slender katana pierced through Zaraki's body, followed by a voice that wanted to cry but had no tears. Bastard, I really should have killed this idiot. The 11th Division is finished. How much money will it take to rebuild it? Zaraki ignored the severe pain all over his body, and suddenly turned his head as if he saw a ghost, and Dustless came into his sight. He was unharmed. Chapter 993. Zaraki's pupils dilated, and his face showed a look of horror. For the first time in his life, he showed an expression of seeing a ghost. Impossible! Zaraki roared loudly, and even because he was too surprised, his tone was full of sharpness, and he said to himself in disbelief, "Is this an illusion?" Puchi! The tingling pain from his chest made Zaraki's face twitch, and his whole body broke out in cold sweat uncontrollably. Ouch! Endless grief and indignation roared out from Zaraki's mouth, and the Ryatsu all over his body once again rose to a shocking level. Even because the golden Ryatsu was too dazzling, Dustless had to close his eyes. This guy is a living monster. Although I deliberately deviated from the heart, this kid should have been seriously injured after being cut, and he shouldn't be as lively as he is now. Although he closed his eyes, his observation hockey was still unfolded, and Zaraki's every move couldn't escape Dustless's eyes. How do you feel? If you mess around, you will die. Looking at the bleeding Zaraki, Dustless pulled out the first-generation ghost blade, and looked at Zaraki with a pair of dull eyes, and said, "It's useless to struggle." When this boring battle began, the actual outcome was already decided. Be my vice captain. Dustless gloomily looked at the flat ground that was torn apart and swallowed by the long and narrow crack. His old face turned green, and he immediately said angrily, "Stop, I don't want to kill you. It's not worth it to kill you. At least I can sell you to that pervert Mayuri for research, and maybe I can get some help to rebuild the 11th Division." Zaraki didn't seem to appreciate it, and the boundless Ryatsu in his body, not only did it not stop, but it was stimulated by the intact Dustless and desperately leaked out. Ha ha ha! A wild and bloodthirsty laughter jumped out of Zaraki's mouth, and his killing intent was endless. He once again raised his Zanpakuto, and his overbearing eyes were far more ferocious than a wild beast. The desperate beast will not obey. It will only become more and more fierce and bloodthirsty. Let's fight it out! Zaraki roared loudly. His vigorous and resolute tone spread throughout the entire Soul Society. He was covered in blood, and his body was even pierced by Dustless. The bloody hole caused by Dustless's fist was clearly visible, but even so, he still rushed over with full energy. Boom boom boom. The earth trembled, and Zaraki didn't take a step forward, but the ground trembled with him. I should have told you before that this isn't a fair battle. In the end, this boring battle is just a one-sided annihilation. This is the last time I'll repeat it. Staring coldly at Zaraki, Dustless didn't hold back. This kid just needed to let him live. There was no need to be merciful. What's the captain doing? I don't know, but this Ryatsu is really terrifying. I thought that Zaraki was a monster, but it turns out that the captain is also a monster. He is not worse than Zaraki. Nonsense, he's the captain of our 11th Division, the 11th Sword 8 of Soul Society. It's only natural that he's strong. Tiske, you shameless fence-sitters, You just said that the captain is no match for him, and now you're changing your mind. Despicable. In the distance, some of the stronger members of the 11th Division were discussing and despising each other, but they were all confused by Dustless's strange posture. Raising his right arm high, his thumb pointed to the depths of the sky. His whole body was particularly cold, and his indifferent eyes looked directly at Zaraki. Hado 90. A few simple words, but it contained magic. Above the 9th heaven, the white sky fell an evil blade. Dustless quietly looked at Zaraki, only to see that this kid was still foolishly rushing over, completely ignoring the strange black light in the sky. Untactful man. Shaking his head, Dustless finally said two indifferent words. Black coffin. As Dustless's voice fell, the falling black light became faster and sharper, and in the blink of an eye, it swallowed Zaraki whole. Pucci. Pucci. Unlike before, the black coffin obviously wasn't at full strength this time. There was no black coffin, only a few intersecting black light cut Zaraki. Puff! The cold light flashed, Zaraki's flesh was cut open, and finally he fell to the ground unwillingly. Although it didn't cut him into pieces, the kid's body was almost covered in blood, bruises all over. It was a horrible sight. So strong! Zaraki finally closed his eyes unwillingly. His breath was weak. If he ignored it, he would die without a doubt. You're too cruel, Chinkuan. A beautiful figure descended from the sky. Her calm, elegant, and gentle face fell into Dustless's eyes. He looked up and saw the captain's snow-white hair fluttering in the wind. Her expression was calm and tranquil. Her temperament of standing aloof from worldly affairs made people feel particularly serene. Captain Unohana, you're too serious. I've heard that this kid is tough. He's still breathing. Dustless chuckled, looking calm. His control of power was excellent. Except for his heart and some important organs, the rest of his body was damaged. Moreover, looking at Unohana Retsu's face, Dustless's lips curled up, revealing an unfathomable arc, and said seriously, if I didn't beat him half to death, Captain Unohana's superb medical skills wouldn't be revealed. Doesn't that mean that I should thank you? Hearing this, Unohana Retsu rolled her eyes and shook her head. After becoming the captain, Chinkuan has become more talkative than before. Unohana Retsu's beautiful face bloomed with a gentle smile, like a ray of sunlight, warming one's heart. But Dustless's face was filled with disgust. He knew that Unohana Retsu had the attribute of being two-faced. Chapter 994. Sure enough, Unohua Lai's beautiful eyes narrowed into crescent moons. She stared at Wuchin with a smile on her face. Her lips curved into a light smile that was full of charm. She was bewitching but not flirtatious. Every frown and smile tugged at one's heart. But in Dustless's eyes, it was quite horrifying, giving him a gloomy feeling instead. Cough cough. Dustless awkwardly coughed and said seriously. Yon will return to the 4th Division tomorrow. I have to thank her for these past few days. I also have to thank Captain Unohana for accommodating me. As a new captain, there were naturally many things that needed to be dealt with. Dustless, who did not understand the role of a captain, had no choice but to ask Yon Toru to help him. As a result, he barely managed to survive until now. A captain was extremely busy. Not everyone could be as relaxed as Zaraki Kenpachi in the future, who could even sleep when he had nothing to do. Is it just a verbal thank you? Unohana Retsu said meaningfully. Her smile was even more cunning than Jin Ikamaru. Captain Unohana is referring to... Dustless's body trembled. To be honest, Unohana Retsu's smile was very uncomfortable. He felt extremely uncomfortable and had goosebumps all over his body. In Dustless's eyes, Unohana Retsu, who was right in front of him, was even more terrifying than Vasto Lord. Captain Unohana, if there's anything I can help with, just tell me. Dustless suppressed the strange feeling in his heart and said bluntly. He patted his chest and promised solemnly. In the half a year that he had been in Soul Society, Unohana Retsu had taken care of Dustless quite a bit. If she needed help, Dustless would definitely not reject her. Since you said so, I won't go easy on you when you need help. Unohana Retsu lightly smiled and nodded. Then, a blue halo suddenly appeared from her jade hands and began to heal Zaraki's wounds. Purposely avoiding the vital parts of his body was a piece of cake for her. What an unlucky year. The past few days have been really unlucky. Casually sitting on a rock, Dustless sighed as he looked around at the destroyed 11th Division. Even if he wanted to ask Yamamoto for money, he probably wouldn't be able to, so he could only brace himself and ask Unohana Retsu. I've been tight on money for the past few days, so if it's convenient for Captain Unohana, I wonder if you could lend me. At this point, Dustless fell silent, his old face turning green. Are you trying to borrow money, Chenjun? Unohana Lai saw through Dustless's intentions. Her eyes glowed with surprise. After being seen through by Unohana, Dustless felt extremely conflicted. It was truly difficult to borrow money from a woman, but in the end, he could not deny it and nodded his head. Dustless's money was indeed tight. He could even be said to be penniless. At the same time, he didn't forget to fiercely glare at Zaraki. Once this kid refused to be his hatchet man, Dustless would send Zaraki to Mayuri of the 12th Division. He believed that Mayuri would be very interested in this undying monster. He could exchange it for a large sum of money to repair the 11th Division. That's not a problem. Money is useless to me, and it's also useless to have a lot of money on hand. The 11th Division was destroyed by the two of you, and it does need to be rebuilt. This was caused by a private fight. It's already a blessing that the head captain did not scold you, and it's even more impossible for him to give you the money to repair it. You'll have to think of a way yourself. Unohana Lai spoke in an orderly manner. Things that were caused by oneself must be dealt with by oneself. This was the rule of Soul Society. Of course I know this. After all, I'm not as rich as Shomu's family. I don't even have a single cent. Captain Unohana definitely wouldn't want me to sleep on the streets. Dustless ridiculed helplessly. He did not forget to curse Zaraki in his heart. It was all because of this kid's recklessness that the 11th Division was completely destroyed. Dustless even had the thought of robbing Shomu's family. A hero without money would be trapped to death. That's right. Suddenly remembering something, Dustless slapped his forehead. His eyes looked at the captain's Haori that he was wearing, and his headache disappeared. He suddenly felt enlightened. Could it be? Seeing Dustless's relieved and proud expression, Unohana Lai vaguely understood what he was thinking. She did not know whether to laugh or cry as she said, "You're not planning to sell the captain's Haori, are you?" "Why not?" Dustless glanced at the shocked Unohana Lai and asked. He then went straight to the point and said, "Since the captain's Haori is useless to me, why not sell it for some money?" Unohana Lai's eyes darkened. She did not expect the usually intelligent Dustless to have such a strange side. She shook her head and denied, "This represents the captain's identity. Even if you want to sell something like the captain's Haori, who would dare to buy it?" Buying the captain's Haori? No one in Soul Society would be that bold. "I can lend you the money, but I have a condition." Chinjun. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He then said seriously, "Captain Unohana Lai, just say what you want. You've helped me countless times in Soul Society. You're treating me like an outsider now." Allah Allah Allah. Chinjun is so straightforward. Seeing Dustless being so straightforward, Unohana Lai nodded her head in satisfaction. She put down the work she was doing and moved closer to Dustless. Her watery eyes circled around him. Because they were so close, they could even hear each other's breathing. "Captain Unohana, you!" Dustless twisted his body uncomfortably. He could even smell the faint fragrance of Unohana Lai's body. He could not help but choke. Just as he was about to ask, Unohana Lai suddenly moved closer to Dustless's ear. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's, but the content of her words shocked Dustless. "Did I hear wrong? Are you sure you want me to do that, Captain Unohana?" After a while, Dustless looked at Unohana Lai suspiciously. Chapter 995. Dustless's eyes widened, and he couldn't even breathe properly. "Captain Unohana. No, women can't be underestimated." What Unohana Retsu just said was to ask Dustless to keep an eye on Sosuke Aizen. "I don't know why, but I feel like there's something wrong with Captain Aizen. Sometimes, he's too calm in the face of certain things. It's like he knows everything. It's really hard to sleep and eat well." Her voice was filled with worry and caution. Unohana Lai lowered her voice to a volume that only Wu Chen and herself could hear. Hearing this, Wu Chen smiled mysteriously and asked curiously, "Where is it exactly? If Captain Unohana wants me to keep an eye on Aizen, you should at least point me in a direction." "This." Unohana hesitated for a moment before smiling bitterly. "Chinjun, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but this feeling is completely baseless. Sometimes, even I think it's an illusion. In reality, it's just my intuition. To put it more simply, it's just my own guess. Dustless rolled his eyes. People say that a woman's intuition is very accurate, and it seems like it's true. There's no need for Captain Unrestrained Flower to tell me, I understand, Dustless readily agreed. This matter was nothing to him. Moreover, even if Dustless didn't pay attention to Aizen, Sosuke Aizen wouldn't let him go so easily. Maybe he was hiding in some unknown corner, observing Dustless's every move. In fact, it was just as Dustless guessed. Aizen was indeed paying attention to him right now. In the central 46 room, blood flowed like a river, and there was a despairing silence. Because of the time, the blood on the ground had even solidified. In the basement of Central Room 46, there was a large, well-equipped laboratory. There were a few people working, and the mysterious person was staring at the LCD screen. If we want to deal with Captain Unohana, based on the current situation, we have to count her in as well. Ikamaru Jin frowned deeply as he said seriously, "What ability does that brat have?" In less than half a year, he managed to trick the captain of Uno Flower into joining his faction. Was our previous plan too stupid, or was the captain of the 11th Division too cunning? Dong Xianyao's face was ashen, and his voice was extremely hoarse. Sosuke Aizen was expressionless as he quietly observed Dustless talking to Unohana through the LCD screen. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. Let him be captain for a few more days. We'll deal with him when we're ready. Aizen's success was mainly due to his ability to grasp the right timing and analyze the strength of both sides. Now was not the time to have a falling out with Dustless and Soul Society. At the very least, he had to wait until he created the Hogyoku. Revenge was a dish best served cold, so there was no need to worry about temporary gains and losses. Hurry up and bring Hogyoku here. The Hogyoku must be made quickly. Time waits for no one. The recent developments are completely different from my previous plan. Aizen's eyes flashed with hesitation as he made up his mind. Recently, he had been feeling uneasy, but he couldn't explain it clearly. Everything is for this plan. This time, we must be able to make the Hogyoku, break the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami, and step into the realm of gods with a mortal body. East Sensei was Aizen's most loyal dog, and his face was full of enthusiasm. In the past he often failed. The biggest reason was that his soul was not enough. Now that he had captured a captain alive and integrated it into the creation of the Hogyoku, his soul power would increase exponentially. The captain's soul would be dozens of times stronger than an ordinary Shinigami. Time flew by, and 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. In the first team's building, the captains gathered, including Dustless. This was the first time he attended a captain's meeting. During this time, Zaraki was persuaded by Dustless to join the 11th team and become a vice-captain. Whenever there was a grand void or a riot in Soul Society, he would always be the first to come out. The head captain was quite happy about this. After all, Zaraki was his disciple to some extent. Head captain. Everyone was silent. Dustless immediately stood up and pointed at Hueco Mundo. Last time, Silent Soul Society was attacked by Balegang. We should immediately retaliate against Hueco Mundo. Aizen's old face twitched slightly, and he tried to stop him. Balegang has fallen in Soul Society. Without the existence of the king of Hueco Mundo, the entire Hueco Mundo will fall into chaos. All the grand voids will be fighting for the throne. We should just watch from the sidelines. There is no need to go to Hueco Mundo. How could he let Dustless have his way? Listening to his decisive tone, it was obvious that he wanted to kill all the Vasto Lord in Hueco Mundo. In the future, Aizen was counting on the grand voids to destroy the Shinigami. How could he let Dustless destroy them now? Yamamoto shook his head. He also thought it was impossible. This time, he chose to stand on Aizen's side. Captain Aizen is right. Hueco Mundo has already fallen into chaos. There is no need for the Shinigami to interfere. Aizen followed the head captain's tone and said, and the number of voids and Shinigami must be balanced. If the ratio is too high, it will lead to the destruction of the entire world. Bullshit destruction. Dustless scolded in his heart. In the future, all the grand voids died in the Battle of Kazucho, but the world didn't collapse. To put it bluntly, Aizen's words were to protect the Vasto Lord in Hueco Mundo. Chapter 996. Aizen looked like he was alone, but he had a lot of influence. Hueco Mundo was his backyard, and Soul Society still had East Sensei and Jin. Not only that, East Sensei had a good relationship with Sajin, while Aizen had a good relationship with Yukitake Jushiru and Shunsui Kayakura. There were 13 captains in Soul Society's Godei 13, and more than half of them were directly related to Aizen. Captains like Xiaofan and Kuchiki Byakuya rarely spoke, but Aizen was able to fool most captains with his good-natured face. Other than Aizen and Dustless, everyone else in the Godei 13 had a good relationship. Many vice-captains respected Aizen. Aizen has accumulated so many hidden pawns, I need to get rid of them first. Staring at East Sensei and Ikamaru Jin, Wu Chen was thinking of a countermeasure. East Sensei wanted to get close to Aizen, but Ikamaru Jin was just pretending to be obedient. After thinking for a while, Dustless decided to deal with East Sensei first. Captain East Sensei, looking at Dongxian Yao with ill intentions, Wu Chen asked pointedly. A while ago, a few of my subordinates and my colleagues from the 9th Division went to drink. After getting drunk, I accidentally heard the members of the 9th Division say that 2 months ago, they had captured Phoenix Bridge Rokuro. He inexplicably disappeared. This casual sentence caught the attention of all captains, and they all looked at East Sensei. You're overthinking this. East Sensei was an extraordinary person to be able to climb to the position of captain. He said calmly, 10 days ago, Central Room 46 ordered me to execute Kikuhashi Rokujiro in secret. I didn't dare to publicize it because he controls Hollow and Shinigami. Central Room 46 was afraid of causing unnecessary trouble, so they ordered me to execute him in secret. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. After that, East Sensei bowed to the captains, blaming himself. I think you guys are the ones who used it for experiments. Dustless snorted coldly in his heart and chose to continue his attack. Dustless's eyes narrowed into crescents as he chuckled inwardly. Then he praised loudly. The relationship between Captain Dongxian and the sages of Central Room 46 is so harmonious that it makes others jealous. Every time there was an accident or when the mission failed, they would stand up for you. We're all captains, so why is there such a huge gap between us? These words caused all the captains to look at East Deity Yao. It wasn't just Higashi-sensei, but also Aizen Sosuke and Ikamaru Jin. Every time something happened to them, Central 46 would stand up and protect them. That's normal. Dongxian is observant and can do what others can't. Furthermore, Central Room 46 is made up of 46 sages. Naturally, they can see that Captain Dongxian is doing his best for Soul Society. It's normal for them to sympathize with him, said a tall man with an airtight head. This person was the captain of the 7th Division, Zhuazhan. That damned bear really isn't a good person. As soon as he saw East Sensei in danger, he immediately came to his rescue. Dustless sighed inwardly. Soul Society was in such a situation. The trio led by Aizen had connections throughout Soul Society. Whether it was the Central 46, the captains or the vice-captains, they all had a deep relationship with Aizen. Defeating him with schemes was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Once Aizen, Ikamaru Jin, or East Sensei were attacked, someone would stand up and help them. Captain Dustless. Just as Dustless was planning how to trap Aizen, he spoke first, displeased. You just took office and you're already suspecting the other captains. This doesn't seem right. That's right. We're all captains, so we can trust each other. Yukitake Jushiru had a good personal relationship with Aizen, so he stood up to help. Shunsui lowered his hat. Although he didn't speak, everyone knew about his relationship with Yukitake. Only a pedantic person would question the orders of the Central 46. The 11th Division is indeed a bunch of beasts. Keiki Byakuya opened his eyes and said coldly. Without exception, everyone's spearhead was directed at Dustless. It could be said to have aroused public anger all at once. That's enough. Captain Dustless is right. The Central 46 dared to hide this from me. After a while, I'll go and punish them. Yamamoto's face was filled with dissatisfaction. He waved his hand. I'm not feeling well today. The meeting ends here. Please go back. Inside the 4th Division's building. Chinkuen, you know that Aizen has a lot of connections. Why did you deliberately confront him? Unohana Retsu wrinkled her nose, dissatisfied with Dustless's risky actions today. Because of Aizen, you've angered all the captains. It's not worth it. Not worth it? Not necessarily. Dustless drank the tea in his mouth and smiled mysteriously. Unohana forgot about someone. He helped me today. Unohana Retsu didn't remember who helped Dustless. Almost everyone was criticizing Dustless. Even Keiki Byakuya, who rarely spoke, jumped out. You mean, the head captain? Unohana Retsu was shocked. The head captain was the only one who spoke for Dustless today. Yes, it's him. Dustless didn't deny it and sneered. The head captain is in charge of the Goatee I-13. Today, more than half of the captains spoke for Aizen. Even his two students, Shunsui and Jushiro Yukitake, are on the same side as Aizen. What will the head captain think? Aizen should have been the head captain, but now it was Sosuke Aizen. One could imagine how the head captain felt. He would definitely hold a grudge against Aizen in the future. If Aizen can win over the captains, we can do the same. He'll definitely stand on our side in the future. He might even try to suppress Aizen. Dustless smiled. Chapter 997. If Aizen can win over the captains, we can do the same to the head captain. In the future, he will definitely stand on our side and even try to suppress Aizen. Dustless smiled evilly. Unohana Lai nodded. On the surface, it seemed like Aizen had won, but in reality, the head captain was wary of him. More than half of the captains in Soul Society supported Aizen. How could the head captain have any face left? You're really treacherous. Unohana Lai sighed and touched her forehead. She suddenly felt a headache. Of course, she was worried about Aizen. Treacherous? Dustless rolled his eyes and looked at Unohana Lai. He didn't think he went too far. There can't be two suns in the sky, and there can't be two rulers. Not only was Aizen Sosuke targeted, but there was also Yawatch. Dustless wouldn't let him off easily. Dustless would only be at ease if they were dead. That so-called Hogyoku should be completed soon. Thinking of the Ryatsu that disappeared, Dustless smirked. He let Aizen be proud for a while today, but it wasn't without a price. In exchange, the Hogyoku will belong to Dustless in the future. Chinkuin, what are you smiling about? You're so cunning. Unknowingly, Unohua heard Dustless's sinister laughter and his dark expression. Immediately, she felt uneasy. I'm thinking about how to deal with Aizen. Dustless felt a chill. To be honest, he was very wary of Unohana Lai, a woman with sharp intuition and quick thinking. Smart women were sometimes very likable, but sometimes they were also very annoying. Wandless Empire was surrounded by ice mountains. The environment was cold and gloomy. He's dead. The temperature was extremely low. Inside the palace, which should have been a forbidden zone for living creatures, a human voice rang out. What's the name of the Grim Reaper captain who killed Busby? Which team is he from? Also, tell me the details of your battle. The person who asked the question had exquisite facial features, a cold expression, and a noble bearing. It was the commander of the Stern Cross Knights, Jugram. While Yawatch was in hibernation, Jugram had been given the mask of the ruler. All matters of the Wandless Empire were under Jugram's control. His words carried enormous weight, and no one dared to go against his will. Those who knew Jugram would know that he rarely got angry, but at this moment, Candace heard a rare hint of anger from him. Of course, there was also a strong killing intent. That death god captain. How did he know about these secrets? Strange. Could it be that there are other spies in the Wandless Empire besides me? Candace asked herself honestly. Only a few people in Wandless Empire knew about the relationship between Busby and Jugram. The two had known each other for almost 1,000 years and could be considered close friends. Now that Jugram was angry, it was reasonable. The person who killed Busby that day wasn't the captain of the Grim Reapers. He seemed to be the vice-captain of the 4th Division, but his strength was beyond imagination. He was much more terrifying than the usual captain-level Grim Reapers. Candace explained according to Dustless instructions. Hearing this, a hint of surprise appeared on Jugram's expressionless face. He glanced at Candace coldly and waved his right hand, which was thinner than a woman's, indicating that Candace could leave. Do we need to get rid of him immediately? Candace turned around and asked as she turned to leave. There's no need. Basby will never die, never. Jugram's answer was very light, but it was filled with confidence and certainty. Basby was very important. He was a rare fighting force, and Wandless Empire couldn't do without him. When His Majesty wakes up in the future, he will definitely have the ability to revive him. For normal people, this is as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but for His Majesty, it's a piece of cake. As Yawatcha's confidant, Jugram naturally understood his abilities. I'll take my leave. Candace's expression froze when she heard this. She clenched her fist without leaving a trace, but she still chose to leave. Jugram's strength was second only to Yawatch in the Wandless Empire. Blindly challenging him would only bring about their own destruction. They were not in the same dimension. Inside the Soul Society, Dustless also returned from the 4th Division to the 11th Division. Because it was a combat division, most of the 11th Division's missions were combat. Therefore, Dustless threw all the responsibilities to Zaraki. After all, he liked to kill. Boom boom boom. Dustless, who had just fallen asleep, was awakened by a strange spiritual pressure. His eyes instantly widened. This spiritual pressure. It's not as cold and noble as the Grim Reaper's, nor is it as bloodthirsty as the Void's spiritual pressure. Sensing the difference in the spiritual pressure, Dustless muttered. He looked at the sky in the distance and was shocked to find that the spiritual pressure was surging from East Deity Fortress's 9th Division. Giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. The heavens didn't abandon me. Dustless sneered and disappeared in a single stride. He had always disliked East Deity Fortress's blind man, who often jumped out to fight him. He was an eyesore, and now he might be able to use this opportunity to teach him a lesson. Even if he couldn't kill him, he would at least kick him out of his position as captain. Your suitable target has appeared. There's work to do, Zaraki. Dustless appeared in the 11th Division and said to the excited Zaraki. He was a simple-minded person, so it was easy to trick him. Chapter 998. The reason why the captain was called the captain was because he was different from ordinary people in all aspects. The mysterious Ryatsu had attracted the attention of the entire Soul Society. All the captains realized that something was wrong. They released their Ryatsu and rushed towards the 9th Division like cannonballs. Hee hee. Dustless's sinister laughter came from the horizon. He already vaguely guessed what this special spiritual pressure fluctuation was. Hogyoku. Damn you, Aizen. Do you really think you can just let this go? In your dreams. The medium in Rokuro's soul has finally awakened. Thinking of the importance of the Hogyoku, Wuchan's pace was faster. He turned his head and looked down at the blockhead behind him. He rolled up a storm and suddenly scolded in a bad mood. Hurry up, Zaraki. This guy doesn't even know the most basic Shuinpa. Bastard, what's going on? Why is this happening? Give me an explanation. In the dark laboratory, Aizen's face was livid. He looked at the ball in his hand in disbelief. A large amount of Ryatsu was leaking out of it. I don't understand this either, Aizen-sama. East Senpai was bitter. He didn't know why the moment the Hogyoku was made, the Ryatsu inside began to riot and swept across Soul Society. The explosion of Ryatsu was one thing, but Rokuro's Ryatsu was also in it. This was bad. Before, East Senpai had to report Rokuro's death to the head captain. Now that his Ryatsu was in such a mysterious bowl, he couldn't explain it even if he had 100 mouths. Bastard, what did I do wrong? Aizen was shocked. He felt a chill run down his spine as cold sweat dripped down his back. He could feel several spiritual presences sweeping towards him. The fastest ones were Dustless and Zaraki. They rushed over like lightning. There was no reasonable explanation for the sudden change in the situation. So Suke Aizen's plan was about to fail. Boom boom boom. The golden light covered the sky. The Hogyoku's Ryatsu erupted even more. Aizen tried to suppress it with his own Ryatsu, but he couldn't do it. Aizen stared at the Hogyoku's Ryatsu. That's not right. This golden light is somewhat familiar, Aizen said after observing for a few seconds. When he first came to Soul Society, Dustless used a similar golden light to defeat Yen Cheng's Sword 8. Could it be the captain of the 11th Division? As his thoughts sank, Aizen's murderous intent surged. His entire being was filled with fatal danger. I don't think so. If he knew that we were developing something like Hogyoku, I'm afraid that he would have already reported it to the head captain. Ikamaru Jin interrupted. Aizen's eyes flickered as he stared at Dong Xianyao. Dong Xianyao's heart skipped a beat. Dong Xianyao felt a chill down his spine. He quickly got down on one knee and said, I am absolutely loyal to Aizen-sama. The Hogyoku riot had nothing to do with me. I am innocent. Aizen didn't deny it. He knew that East Sage was loyal to him. Get up, Yao. You have worked with me for many years. I can feel that your heart has never changed. Aizen continued helplessly, but this time, someone needs to take the blame. This is the 9th division. In short, you can't stay by my side anymore. Escape to Hueco Mundo. Bail Egan has fallen. Someone must take the position of King of Hueco Mundo. You will manage Hueco Mundo for me in the future. Dong Xianyao wasn't an idiot. He understood that Aizen wanted to sacrifice him. He would take all the blame. Yao, I know you feel wronged and unwilling, but don't forget your righteousness. Temporarily hibernating is for the sake of a better future. Aizen patiently persuaded Dong Xianyao. Then, under Ikamaru Jin's surprised gaze, he unsheathed Kyoka Suigetsu. Puchi! Dong Xianyao's chest burst open. Aizen stuffed the half-finished Hogyoku into Dong Xianyao's chest. I'll give you the Hogyu for the time being. Betray Soul Society immediately and fight with the captains to test their strength. Of course, if the situation permits, you can kill the captain of the 11th Division, Wu Chen. Understood. Aizen-sama. Dong Xianyao was so grateful that he almost cried. He looked at the Hogyoku in his chest. This was the best proof of Aizen's trust in him. If Dustless was here, he would have scoffed. This was only a half-finished Hogyoku. Aizen wouldn't care about it. Apart from that, Dong Xianyao couldn't tame the Hogyoku. If Dong Xianyao could use the Hogyoku to kill Dustless, it would be best. Even if he couldn't, Dong Xianyao could escape to Hueco Mundo and help Aizen manage the chaotic Hueco Mundo. At the same time, he could gain Dong Xianyao's trust and continue working for him. Killing several birds with one stone. Aizen would certainly do this. In the end, the Hogyoku would still belong to him. He was just lending it to Dong Xianyao. Boom boom boom. A berserk spiritual pressure spread out like a tide, covering the entirety of Quiet Soul Society. Compared to before, this violent spiritual pressure seemed to have taken stimulants, increasing by dozens of times. Dustless looked up and saw a black light rushing towards him. It was extremely fast. 5,000 meters, 3,000 meters. 100 meters, the distance was rapidly shortened. In the end, it was completely exposed to Dustless. Dong Xianyao. You came just in time. Dustless's eyes were cold. He fearlessly raised his sword to meet the attack. Chapter 999. Dustless frowned as he noticed East Sensei's abnormality. When did this half-baked kid reach this level? Although Dustless never fought with East Sensei, he knew about him. In the Goatee 13, East Sensei's strength was in the middle. Even when he turned into a phantom, his strength was average. Ha! Is that a glowing pearl? Hogyoku? Dustless immediately noticed that there was an obvious wound on East Sensei's chest, and it was filled with a mysterious glowing pearl. No wonder this kid improved so much. It's because of the Hogyoku. East Sensei's speed and Ryatsu changed after the baptism of the Hogyoku. His eyes were bloodshot, and his body was filled with murderous intent. Idiot, it seems like the Hogyoku is controlling you, not the other way around. Well, with your weak strength, you shouldn't be able to control the Hogyoku. He aimed his palm at the Eastern deity and was about to give him a fatal blow when an unexpected voice rang out. Heido number 73. Double Lotus Blue Flame Fall. A blazing flame attack rose from the ground and instantly engulfed East Sensei. He got rid of the suspicion too quickly. Looking at the two figures on the ground, Dustless was helpless. Looking at them, he saw Jin and Aizen Sosuke. And the one who activated the 73rd Heido was Sosuke Aizen. Bang bang bang. In the cloudless sky, several black figures appeared. In the blink of an eye, the captains of the Goatee 13 rushed over. Captain Dongxian, give this old man an explanation. What's going on with you and your current state? Head Captain Yamamoto said in a deep voice. A fiery red halo was emitted from his back. It's the same as the Masked Legion. No, it's even more thorough than them. Dustless explained. At this moment, East Sensei's body was overflowing with white sticky Ryatsu. In the blink of an eye, East Sensei was back to normal. Explanation? Old man, are you blind? The facts have already explained everything. What else do you need to explain? Thinking of Aizen's order, East Senpai had to take the blame. Bale Gang invaded Soul Society before, and this time, I was the one who secretly hurt Phoenix Bridge Rokuro. In order to prevent Dustless from nagging about these matters in the future, Aizen had East Sage bear all the sins. In any case, he was going to betray Soul Society and go to Hueco Mundo. Bearing a few more sins would dispel the captain's doubts. This was very suitable. Dong Xian, why did you betray Soul Society? East Deity Yu's good friend, Sajana of Omura, said in grief. Did you forget that we were together? I made that up to Yuzu Kimura, so that we can work together to uphold justice in Soul Society? What a joke. Soul Society is a place I want to destroy. How can I protect it? East Deity Xiang roared with a crazed expression. His hysterical tone was filled with deep hatred for Soul Society. Captain East Sage, if Soul Society did something wrong, you can tell us. There's no need to make things like this. Aizen also looked heartbroken. Kiki. Just a mere Sosuke Aizen, shut up. If you're willing to go to hell and stretch out your necks for punishment, I can consider giving up my current power. East Sage said arrogantly, then pointed at Aizen and cursed. If you can't do it, then get out of my way. Best actor and best supporting actor, such acting skills, Kiki. Wuchen looked at the scene in front of him with interest. The skills of these two professional actors had reached the realm of perfection. One was cold and ruthless, and the other couldn't bear it. When they cooperated, the audience burst into tears. Head captain. Dustless couldn't stand it anymore. He turned to Yamamoto and said in a low voice, Captain East Sage has fallen to the evil path. We should eliminate him immediately. Humph, don't talk nonsense. East Sage must have been tempted. It must be those bastards from the masquerade. Jean of Omura stood up for East Sage before he could say anything. You're lying to yourself. Twitching his mouth in disdain, Wu Chen directly ignored this black bear. His eyes fell on the head captain, waiting for his reply. At this moment, East Deity was about to go berserk. Her rationality was swallowed by the Hogyoku and she became a killing machine. If you can capture him alive, then do your best. If you can't, then eliminate him. Yamamoto wasn't a soft-hearted person. He had lived for more than 2,000 years. His wisdom and experience far exceeded ordinary people. There were too many mysteries surrounding East Sage. Even if he captured him alive, he still had many questions to ask. Of course, he couldn't capture him alive. If he resisted, he would be eliminated on the spot. Capture me alive? Dream on, you bunch of death gods. Dong Xian Yao sneered. Shortly after, he casually swiped his right arm in the air. Ka sounds rang out, revealing an incomparably long and narrow black cavity. The other side was connected to Hueco Mundo. They could still hear the howls of great voids. Colluding with Hueco Mundo, the evidence is conclusive. Dustless pulled out his sword from its scabbard. His eyes were like torches, and there was a threatening chill in his eyes. He stepped on the void and rushed forward, turning into a raging lightning bolt. Jillian's roar resounded through the sky. The captains didn't hesitate to surround him. As for East Sage, they left it to Dustless to deal with him. It seems that the development of the Hogyoku hasn't succeeded yet. Although East Sage is above the captain level, he is far from Aizen's level. The two sides are completely incomparable. Wu Chen thought to himself. The current Eastern Deity Lord was just a drop in the ocean compared to Hogyu Lan Ran. Chapter 1000. The Hogyoku transformed East Sensei Yao was overflowing with Ryatsu. His whole body was covered with high-density Ryatsu. He was very arrogant. He pointed his sword at the sky. Even East Sensei Yao's body had the characteristics of a hollow physique. His skin was wrapped in white bones, which was very disgusting. His Ryatsu was like milk. You still have a long way to go. With a sneer, Dustless appeared behind East Sensei Yao with a flash step and swept his Zanpakuto. Clang! The bright sparks extinguished, and the Zanpakuto collided with a horrifying roar. East Sage wanted to easily defend against Dustless's attack. Sensing the surging Ryatsu in her body, East Sage wanted to report her confidence index. Go to hell, you eyesore! East Sensei Yao, who was gradually losing his mind due to the Hogyoku, roared. His hatred erupted uncontrollably. Since Dustless came to Soul Society, Aizen's nightmare began. The initiator of all of this was Dustless. Boom boom boom. A huge red light condensed in his mouth, and a giant void flash was instantly formed. The dangerous fluctuation on it was enough to destroy the entire 9th Division. Ha ha ha, East Sensei Yao said proudly while condensing the void flash. I know you can dodge it, but, if you don't, the entire 9th Division will be in trouble. These venomous words were spread throughout the entirety of Quiet Soul Society in an instant, as their spiritual pressure wreaked havoc. Captain East Sensei. Hearing these words, the members of the 9th Division turned ashen. They all widened their eyes and looked up at Dong Xian, who was fighting with Dustless in the sky. At this moment, they all thought it was a dream. The gentle captain who usually respected them was now exceptionally cold and heartless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A large void flash blasted out, leaving a mark in the void along the way. The void flash violently twisted and changed. The void flash was far more powerful than the late-stage Arcana break, Wang Su's flash. As expected of someone who can break the boundary between Reaper and Void. Although this Hogyoku is only a half-finished product, it can still increase East Sensei Yao's strength by several levels. Wu Chen sighed with emotion in his heart. He sensed that the penetrating power of the void flash seemed to want to tear him apart. However, Wu Chen just smiled. The golden light gathered on the blade of the first-generation Ghost Blade. It was also filled with murderous intent. This time, he was going to kill Aizen's loyal dog, East Sensei Yao. Buzz buzz buzz. A crisp rumble rang out from the tip of the first-generation Ghost Blade. The blade was resplendent and bright, and a high density of spiritual pressure covered it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A gigantic slash formed entirely from an extremely strong spiritual pressure shot out. It was even stronger than East Deity Yu's void flash, and the incoming flash was instantly sliced apart. How could he be so strong? I have integrated with the Hogyoku and should be invincible. East Deity shouted out in shock. The aura of death assaulted his nostrils. His nerves immediately reacted and he responded. Bakudo 81, Skybreaker. A transparent wall blocked in front of him, defending against the golden sword pressure that was about to cut through the sky. Sensing the sharpness of the sword pressure, East Deity was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it and would use the Way of Binding again. Way of Binding, 81, Sky Shattering. Two transparent walls appeared in front of him. East Sensei Yao was relieved. Humph. Fusing with Hogyoku? With your strength? Do you think you're Aizen Sosuke? Dustless snorted at East Sensei Yao's arrogant words. East Sensei Yao was only borrowing the power of Hogyoku temporarily. He was still far from being able to fully fuse with it. Aizen saw this and lent East Sensei Yao the Hogyoku. East Sensei Yao was still a few hundred years away from mastering it. Although the Hogyoku in front of him was defective, it was still difficult to master. Looking at the sword pressure coming down, Dong Xianyao casually said, "If I use Sky Shattering with all my strength, it should be able to crack crack crack." Before he could finish his words, a crack appeared on Sky Shattering's sword. Gulp! East Sensei Yao choked in disbelief. His eyes almost fell out. This was not a wall that could defend against Hado 89 and below. It was clearly a piece of paper that could be broken with a single strike. But even so, the power of the attack was weakened a lot. Dao Breaker 88. Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. A dazzling light appeared and cut through the sky. The two powerful attacks inevitably collided. Because the Ryatsu Giant Slash was weakened, it cancelled out the nothingness. Cry, green insect. East Sensei Yao sensed Dustless's danger and didn't dare to be careless. He didn't hesitate to release his Zanpakuto and his strength increased again. Clear Insect Second Style, Red Flying Locust. Countless sharp blades fell like a rainstorm. They were like tracking missiles with a tail that could automatically navigate. The attacks were extremely ruthless. It seemed like they wanted to punch Dustless into a bloody hole. This kind of child's play again. You dare to keep it for Bankai. I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Dustless curled his lips in contempt. East Sensei Yao thought that he could be reborn with the power of the Hogyoku and become arrogant. At the same time, a large amount of Ryatsu erupted from his body and a transparent wall appeared in front of him. Bakudo 81, Skybreaker. Clang clang clang. The concentrated attacks all landed on Skybreaker and were instantly blocked. They were unable to move forward and were all blocked outside the transparent wall. They were unable to move at all. Behind him, Wu Chen was safe and sound. His expression was lazy. This is ridiculous. They are both Bakudo 81, why is the difference so big? East Sensei Yao's face turned black and couldn't help but be angry. The sky severance that he released with all his strength was torn into nothingness like a piece of paper. On the other hand, Wu Chen's sky severance was very firm and did not even have the most basic reaction. Chapter 1001. East Sensei was absent-minded, and his bloodthirsty eyes lost their luster. Heido 31. Cannonball. The pink light disappeared in an instant, and East Sensei, who was absent-minded, was hit directly. Boom boom boom. The dull explosion attracted everyone's attention, and a huge flame burned in the void. East Sensei. East Sensei's good friend, Sajin, was furious, and his eyes were as round as a fist. He shouted at Dustless, "If anything happens to East Sensei, I will make sure you die with him." But Dustless did not even look at him. A ferocious tiger would not turn its head because of a mad dog's roar. Bang bang bang. Beside Sakumura, a man covered in blood and carrying a broadsword suddenly appeared. His ferocious appearance made people not dare to look at him directly. Azuma laughed almost crazily and said, "To be honest, I also don't like that captain, but I have to admit that he is very powerful. For the time being, I can't beat him." Although Zaraki was arrogant, it didn't mean that he was stupid. When he fought Dustless, he was toyed with, and he didn't even touch Dustless's body. "But if it's you, I'm sure I can cut you into pieces." Zaraki had already raised his Zanpakuto, and the sawtooth blade reflected a soul-stirring light, making people shudder. Boom boom boom. Zwajin, who was so angry that he started laughing, almost went berserk. His nose was crooked from anger. A mere vice-captain dared to provoke him? He immediately unleashed his captain-level spiritual pressure, which was as boundless as the ocean, causing the ground to tremble. In an instant they were in the gravity field. Everyone was carrying 1,000 pounds of weight, and it was difficult for them to move. Crack crack crack. Jillian, who was wandering around, couldn't bear the violent Ryatsu, and his bones were crushed by the gravity, turning into powder. "A bunch of idiots, you can take your time." In the distance, Aizen, who was trying his best to kill Jillian, was absent-minded. His mind was focused on the captains, and he was carefully recording their moves and approximate strength. Aizen's eyes were like a camera, carefully recording everyone's movements, and then slowly analyzing them in his mind. It's useless. East Sensei was surrounded by flames, and even his whole body was on fire, but he didn't feel anything. He was completely isolated by the white bones on his skin, and there was no pain. Not even the slightest pain. Hollow steel skin? Narrowing his eyes, Wu Chen speculated in his heart. Immediately, the spiritual pressure in his body increased by another level. Puchi! Puchi! Without being attacked, his body split open, and the pain spread all over his body. East Sensei was shocked as he found out that his body was being torn apart by some mysterious force, and he was bleeding. A cold katana's light covered him. Could it be? She suddenly noticed that the sky above her was incomparably dark, and East Deity instantly raised her head. Ryatsu, raise eyes. Ants Ryatsu, Ryatsu, Ryatsu's Ryatsu, and Ryatsu's Ryatsu. Several intersecting black rays of light descended from the sky, leaving a mess wherever they went. Even the wind and waves that blew past were cut apart. Heido 90. Ryatsu glanced at East Sensei. Hollow steel skin shouldn't be able to defend against this move. Black coffin. Puchi! Puchi! As his voice fell, East Deity Yao's entire body was torn apart. The invisible blade easily tore through his steel skin and pierced through his body, cutting him into pieces. Even his head was cut into several pieces. Damn, this is bad. I didn't control my strength. Seeing this, Dustless cursed. His intention was to kick East Sensei out of the captain's position, and not to kill him. If he killed East Sensei now, it meant that the Hogyoku would fall into Soul Society's hands. A semi-finished Hogyoku was good, but it was useless to give it to Dustless. He wanted a finished Hogyoku. He regretted killing East Sensei. This kind of talent was useless, but it was too early to kill him. At the very least, he had to wait for the Hogyoku to be born. Ha! You can't kill me. The semi-finished Hogyoku in his chest shone with a mysterious light, and then it spewed out a large amount of white liquid, and reconnected East Sensei's broken body. He didn't die. Dustless was rather surprised. Immediately, he smiled in relief and said, "Super regeneration? This seems to be a hollow move. But, you didn't die, it's God's blessing. I will burn incense when I have time." Dustless didn't care about the ability of super regeneration. He was 10-tailed, and he could also recover any organ in his body. This kid can only use the power of the Hogyoku, and he can also use the ability of super regeneration. But East Sensei can't evolve. It seems that I have to wait for a while. Dustless sighed in his heart. He could only wait for the Hogyoku to be completed, and then he could rob it. In fact, he was jealous of the Hogyoku's other great ability. Endless evolution. Although I can't kill you now, I will cripple you first. Your rotten life, after you finish serving me, I will send you to hell to meet your dead girlfriend. His pupils shot out a sinister ray of light, and Dustless instantly vanished without a trace. This sudden turn of events caused Dong Xianyao's entire person to be stunned, and he was flabbergasted. The restless East Sensei immediately released his Ryatsu, and focused on searching for Dustless's traces. Ka. The steel in front of him had actually been brutally chiseled into a large hole. Unknowingly, Dustless had already arrived in front of East Sensei, and looked down at him with cold eyes. Chapter 1002. East Sensei was extremely frightened, his hands were trembling, and he touched his heart that was penetrated. For a moment, he was dumbfounded. What is this? It was obviously punched through by a fist. What a joke! How can a person's taijutsu be so strong? Bastard, what kind of witchcraft did you use? East Sensei was about to vomit blood. His body was shattered by someone using taijutsu. This was really not a glorious thing. If he didn't deliberately perceive the Ryatsu, East Sensei would have thought that the person in front of him suddenly changed and became the omnipotent captain. Are you talking about this? Due to the Hogyoku, East Sensei was different from before. His blind eyes were reopened, and he could see the outside world like a normal person. Black fist. Looking at the black wrist in astonishment, East Sensei thought that he was old and dizzy, so he subconsciously rubbed his eyes. It's just a casual and ordinary punch. Raising the black iron fist under the sunlight, it suddenly reflected an invincible sharpness, as if in front of this fist, everything in the world can be easily shattered. Being able to break your steel skin, it can only mean that you are too weak. A casual and simple sentence almost made East Sensei faint. His steel skin can even defend against the captain's attack, but Dustless's dismissive tone clearly said that it was just a thin layer of paper. In anger, East Sensei wanted to use his trump card in one fell swoop. Bankai. Insect Cleansing Final Style Demon Cricket. The Ryatsu released by Zanpakuto suddenly turned into a huge ellipsoidal barrier, wrapping East Sensei and Dustless in it. The surroundings were dark and dim. Is this his Bankai? Dustless muttered to himself. He wanted to speak, but suddenly found that his throat seemed to be stuck, and he couldn't speak at all. Not only that, his hearing, vision, smell, and even his perception of Ryatsu were deprived in an instant. He couldn't perceive anything, and all information from the outside world was isolated. He only knew that he was trapped in a black barrier. Kiki. How does this feel? This is my Bankai. Even you are helpless against it, right? East Deity walked in front of Dustless and smiled sinisterly. Following his line of sight, Dustless was standing in his original spot, completely unaware. Even if East Deity Yu was standing right in front of him, he did not notice. This was the ability of the Eastern deity's Bankai. It could completely erase everything about the enemy. In this unique domain, you can't feel anything. The only thing you can feel is pain. Don't worry, I will torture you slowly. I will not let you die so easily. East Deity's tone was filled with the joy of revenge. Regardless of whether it was before or just now, she had always been suppressed by Dustless. Now that she was able to retaliate, she felt especially refreshed. With a cold expression, East Deity wanted to slash at Dustless. Pucci! Dustless's skin was very fragile, and it was easily cut by the Zanpakuto, and blood kept flowing. This bastard's ability is actually so strange. Dustless's face instantly turned incomparably pale. The stinging pain from the wound caused him to break out in cold sweat. He twitched uncontrollably, and even his body swayed from side to side. Humph! It's useless to regret. This is what you get for going against Aizen-sama. And don't think that this is the end. This is just the beginning. I will cut you into pieces. Pucci! 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 After saying that, East Deity Yu waved his Zanpakuto madly and began to trample on Dustless. His screams were endless, and those screams were worse than death. One had to admit that East Deity Yu was born to be an executioner. He specifically chose the softest and most painful parts of the human body. His technique was very delicate. In half a minute, Dustless's flesh was removed from his body. Don't you like to be in the limelight? Now that you are in such an unprecedented state, it will shock the entire Soul Society. Eastern Deity Yu coldly laughed. Wu Chen's entire body had been cleanly sliced off, leaving only a skeleton and a head. Of course, in order to ensure Dustless's safety, his organs were also preserved. But in this state, his vitality could only last for a few minutes. Hehe. You have a good relationship with Captain Unohua. I wonder what interesting things will happen when she sees you in this state. I'm really looking forward to it. Then, East Deity Yu undid his Bankai, and the sky became clear again. Where did that kid go? As soon as he undid his Bankai, Dustless disappeared without a trace. East Deity Yu looked around, and his gaze suddenly froze in the distance. He clenched his fists. He was shocked to find that Dustless was unharmed. His expression was calm, and there was even a faint smile on his face. Impossible, what's going on? Could it be that I was dreaming just now? The moment he lowered his head to think, East Deity Yu was petrified. His entire body turned into a human stick. It was exactly the same as the scene in his dream. East Deity Yu's limbs and flesh were all removed, leaving only his organs and a head. Did this idiot get beaten silly? He kept chopping himself just now. The insensitive Zaraki said as he stared at East Deity Yu as if he was looking at an idiot. Hearing this, East Deity Yu spat out a mouthful of blood. His vision turned black, and his body fell to the ground. Seriously, I just used a little illusion to turn the target of the attack into himself. I didn't expect such a show to happen. Hee, what a pity. I should have brought a digital camera. Wu Chen curled his lips and sighed. It was a pity that Eastern Deity wanted to kill him with his own hands, leaving only his internal organs and his head. He was literally turning himself into a eunuch. Chapter 1003. Jin moved closer to Aizen and whispered to him. Should we go and help him? What if the captain of the 11th Division pisses him off? Aizen frowned when he heard this, and the word, Chuan, appeared on his face. He originally hoped that Dong Xian would kill Wu Chen. At the very least, she would beat him half to death. Now, it seemed that it was just his wishful thinking. The situation was completely opposite. Dong Xian was going to be beaten half to death. Whether he could leave Soul Society unscathed was a problem. I'm not his opponent. Although he was unwilling, East Sensei had to face this cruel reality. He looked up at Dustless and felt a stab of pain in his heart. His calm and collected expression didn't change at all. This was the best proof that he didn't use his full strength. Let's go and finish the task given by Aizen-sama first. The semi-finished Hogyoku spewed out the milky white liquid again, and East Sensei's body instantly recovered. Before leaving, he glared at Dustless with hatred. His hatred didn't decrease. Instead, because of Dustless's suppression, it went deep into his soul. Just wait and see. Kakakahi raised his hand, and the void shattered like a mirror. A narrow crescent moon appeared, and he stepped into it. So many captains. If I let you leave unscathed, how do you want me to explain to the captain? Inside the dark space, it was pitch black. After a few breaths, a bright light broke the silence of the darkness, and the voice of the King of Nightmares was heard. So strange. A mere Shinigami can tear open the dark space with his bare hands. A sinister aura came from behind. East deity was about to panic. The shadow of death and despair covered his entire body. He who had witnessed Wuchan's horror shivered all over. His Zanpakuto instinctively swept out. Clang! A weak spark flashed, and East Sensei found that his Zanpakuto was caught by a dark hand. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Looking directly at the emotionless eyes that could devour people's reason, East Sensei's eyes flashed with madness. The accumulated Ryatsu in his body quickly spread out like a tsunami, reaching every corner of the dark space. Bankai, insect purging final move, Yama Cricket. The oval-shaped ceiling barrier descended once again. Without exception, Dustless was stripped of all his senses. Other than his sense of touch, which was barely retained, all his other senses disappeared. Of course, leaving the sense of touch was also to let Dustless experience the pain of being cut into pieces. Perhaps it was because he had been teased by Dustless earlier, but a shadow had been left in East Deity's heart. He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he carefully observed for a while. Pucci! The Zanpakuto pierced through his palm, leaving a thumb-sized bloody hole, causing East Sage to grimace in pain. Phew! This shouldn't be an illusion, right? East Deity was about to let out a sigh of relief. His lips curled into a sinister smile of hatred. Just now, because Dustless had tricked him, he had been sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts. Now, he was going to take it all back with interest. What's the use of this ridiculous explanation? Dustless shook his head in disdain. Then, an explosive aura burst out from his body as he savagely attacked the interior of the barrier. Kathy oval-shaped barrier suddenly shook violently. In the airtight dark space, there was a burst of cold air inexplicably, and thumb-sized cracks spread throughout the oval-shaped barrier. It's broken? East Sage suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough. He stared at Dustless's earth-shaking aura. He really couldn't figure out how a person could have such an exaggerated aura. He was just a Shinigami. The Supreme Will pointed to the sky and regarded all living beings as ants. It was vicissitudes and overbearing. The attitude of treating anyone from beginning to end was only one kind of overlooking. In addition to contempt, there was still contempt. In addition to disdain, there was still disdain. Bang bang bang. The oval-shaped barrier couldn't withstand this vast aura. Under the dumbfounded gaze of East Sage, it turned into countless glass fragments and slowly drifted down until it disappeared into nothingness. You want to kill me with this half-baked Bankai? It's too much of a joke. The barrier collapsed, revealing Dustless's cold face. East Sage's Bankai was shattered by the tempered Haoshiku Haki. Although my Bankai defense barrier is very fragile and has been destroyed by others before, how can he rely on his aura? East Sage still hasn't recovered from the shock. He was deeply hesitant and puzzled. His Bankai was destroyed by a person's aura, and it was so simple and thorough. This kind of situation happened for the first time in his life. His nerves were a little numb, and he felt as small as a grain of sand. The game is over. In front of East Sage, a large number of photons gathered, and Dustless's body quickly reassembled, revealing his cold face. Go to hell! East Sage roared, and the Zanpakuto in his hand slashed down towards Dustless's head. Clang clang clang. The same scene played out, exactly the same as before. The big hand covered with armament Haki easily grabbed the incoming Zanpakuto. It's too far away. Some gaps can be made up, and some gaps can't be crossed in a lifetime. First, I'll destroy you, my most loyal slave. With a decision in his heart, Dustless increased the strength of his arm. His right arm exerted force, and the Zanpakuto that was caught hummed, making a sorrowful sound. However, it was ignored by Dustless with a frosty face. Not good. This guy is going to destroy my Zanpakuto. East Sage instantly understood Dustless's intentions and used all his strength to pull out the Zanpakuto, but the effect was minimal, and it couldn't shake Dustless at all. Kakaka. After a few breaths, A crisp sound signaled that East Sage's Zanpakuto was completely destroyed. Chapter 1004. The destruction of the Zanpakuto meant nothing to a Grim Reaper. Especially in the state of Bankai, the consequences of the Zanpakuto being destroyed were extremely serious. Even if it could be repaired in the future, its power would be greatly reduced. However, what angered East Deity the most was that his Zanpakuto was broken into pieces. How was he going to repair it? Oh, don't look so sad. Since you have escaped from the Grim Reaper and become a void, the Zanpakuto is useless. It doesn't matter if it's broken. It doesn't matter anyway. Dustless said with a smile as if it had nothing to do with him. His tone was filled with schadenfreude, which deeply provoked Dong Xianyao. Bullshit! Dong Xianyao roared furiously. Even because of excessive anger, his voice was extremely sharp and numb. Listening to it would make one's soul tremble. You think that's it? Looking at the fragments of the Zanpakuto, Dustless said with disdain. This was just the beginning. The spiritual pressure in his body surged again, emitting a soul-stirring pressure. Due to the overly strong spiritual pressure, even Dong Xianyao cowered and retreated, quickly distancing himself from Wu Chen. A pink light suddenly illuminated the dark space. Is that number 54 Hado, Waste Flame? Dong Xianyao narrowed his eyes and pondered. At the same time, a question arose in his mind. This kind of flame would only burn the target, but for him who was in the void state, its effect was negligible. After the void state, Dong Xianyao's skin was replaced with the void steel skin. It was a world of difference from the previous Grim Reaper state. His defense was almost several times higher. You want to hurt me with this kind of candlelight? Are you not awake? Or are you a child who likes to sleep? Dong Xianyao said sarcastically. After a slight pause, he was about to humiliate Dustless again. However, Dong Xianyao was shocked by Dustless's next move. This guy, is he going to? Looking at the sinister smile on Dustless's face, Dong Xian's expression changed greatly. Soon after, he roared with all his might. If you dare to do that, I will definitely tear you to shreds. In fact, due to her excessive nervousness, East Deity, who had always been elegant, even used vulgarities at this moment. Jia. Dustless smacked his lips when he heard this, and then he sneered. I'm a person who can't be threatened. The more you threaten me, the more disobedient my hands become. With a stern expression, the pink flame in Dustless's hand shot out rapidly, breaking Dao's 54 waste flame. As soon as his voice trailed off, a disc-shaped flame emerged from the ground. Its target wasn't the Eastern Deity Palace, but rather, the shattered Zanpakuto that had fallen to the ground. I'll definitely kill you, you bastard. The furious Eastern Deity Xiang roared loudly. Soon after, he opened his mouth and condensed a huge void flash. Whoosh! Whoosh! Perhaps the heavens took pity on the Eastern Deity Xiang. This time, he was in the same trench as him. Boom! Boom! At the last moment, the void flash successfully stopped the flame of the disc and blew it into ashes. However, the power of the void flash was extraordinary. It was an all-out attack of the Eastern Deity Xiang. Even though it destroyed Dustless's plan to melt the Zanpakuto, the explosion of the void flash was too powerful and successfully affected the shattered Zanpakuto. Under the horrified gaze of the Eastern Deity Xiang, the Zanpakuto that had accompanied him for hundreds of years disappeared forever. Poof! The world in front of him turned black. The furious Eastern Deity was about to vomit blood. It was as if all the blood in his body had been sucked out, leaving only skin and bones. His piercing gaze was so piercing that no one dared to look him in the eye. Allah Allah Allah! Don't stare at me with such a ferocious gaze. This has nothing to do with me. Dustless shrugged his shoulders with an innocent expression. It was the Eastern Deity Xiang who wanted him to destroy his Zanpakuto. Go to hell! As if sensing the anger of the Eastern Deity Xiang, the half-completed Hogyoku in his chest felt his will and continuously released an endless amount of spiritual pressure. Roar, roar, roar. The roar that obviously belonged to the greater void came out from the throat of the Eastern Deity Xiang. At this moment, his voidification had reached a new level. His entire body was wrapped in milky white spiritual pressure. It was airtight. Suddenly, both of his hands straightened. A total of 10 fingers were aimed at Dustless, and at the same time, a black light flashed. 10 void flashes. Your hatred for me is really unforgettable. Dustless could not help but sigh. The fluctuation of the destruction of the void flash caused the time and space in the black cavity to be distorted. Dustless could even see the scene in the depths of the universe. Go to hell, you eyesore of a devil. As the voice that contained monstrous hatred fell, the 10 black void flashes also disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The void flash and the black night sky merged into one, but through the perception of observation hockey, Dustless could still clearly perceive that dozens of flashes that reached the level of destruction were crushing towards him. Seeing this, Dustless did not dodge. His expression was indifferent, as if nothing had happened. He even hummed a tune out of tune. Ran away. That's good. When you and Aizen complete the Hogyoku, I will come and shear the sheep. Smirking, Dustless planned in his heart. Eastern deity Xiang had stepped into Hueco Mundo in the blink of an eye and disappeared. In the dark space, only the 10 void flashes that were ignored by Dustless were left. The moment the void flash was about to swallow Dustless, the void beside him suddenly distorted. Kamui! The distorted space was instantly magnified dozens of times. All the void flashes changed their trajectory and were sucked in the blink of an eye. They did not even touch Dustless's body. Chapter 1005. The Kamui of the left and right eye had different abilities. It could be used for both offense and defense. It was a perfect combination. Just one more step. Dustless thought of something. He got closer to the Kamui and deliberately got closer to the power of Void Flash. His whole body smelled rotten. Sigh. Being a professional actor is really hard. I don't know how Aizen survived for so many years. Wu Chen sighed and said. Looking around, there was a burn on his arm caused by the Void Flash. It was completely done by himself just now. The void in front of him twisted again, and a wave of ripples spread out rapidly like water ripples. Kamui! Asterisk crack. Asterisk in the bottomless black cavity. A mysterious force twisted and exploded. Then, a ray of warm sunlight shone in from the outside. Dustless subconsciously blocked the light. Through the gaps between his fingers, he saw that Soul Society had been restored to its original state. The invaders were also dealt with. The beautiful scenery of Soul Society was restored. Chen-kun, you're injured? Unohana Retsu was surprised. Unohana Retsu's words attracted everyone's attention. They looked at Dustless, or rather, they looked at his burned arm. It seems to be caused by Void Flash, Head Captain Yamamoto said. He had fought countless battles in the past 2,000 years. He could tell that Dustless's injury was caused by Void Flash. And it was a very powerful one. Dustless nodded and said awkwardly, I'm sorry, Head Captain. East Sensei's strength increased too much. I didn't pay attention and let him escape. Facing everyone's gaze, Wu Chen said without blushing or panting. That's not important. However, we must investigate the source of this matter. Head Captain Yamamoto said coldly. He then said to Dustless, let's leave the 11th Division to Vice Captain Zaraki for now. You should go to the 4th Division for treatment. The Void Flash that injured you is very powerful. You should rest for a while. Hearing this, Wu Chen shook his head like a rattledrum, wave after wave. This was just an act he put on purpose to find an excuse to let the East Deity Lord go. In reality, he was completely fine. With the Ten Tails recovery ability, it was only a matter of time. Allah Allah Allah. Chen-kun, don't you trust the 4th Division? You used to be the vice captain of the 4th Division. Unohana Retsu said sadly. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew this black-bellied captain very well. In that case, I'll have to trouble Captain Unohana. Inside the 4th Division's building, the special room was surrounded by smoke. It was extremely hot. There was nothing extra in the room except for a large pool. Dustless was lying comfortably in the hot spring with his eyes closed. He was humming a tune. There's such a good thing. Why didn't I notice it when I was the vice captain of the 4th Division? What a mistake. This mysterious pool of water could actually heal the wounds on the body. It's most likely the path of return was learned from the head of the 0 Division. He opened his eyes and rested his head on his arms. He looked up at the ceiling. In the entire Soul Society, whether it was Urahara Kisuk or Unohana Retsu, the source of this healing method originated from Qilin Temple Tenchilang. Creak. After a long time, Wuchen suddenly noticed that the wooden door was pushed open. In the smoke, there was a figure with white skin and a curvy figure looming in the air. Gulp. Dustless rubbed his eyes. He thought he was hallucinating because of his old age. Who knew that after rubbing his eyes, the curvaceous figure looked even more real? She walked gracefully and slowly appeared in front of Dustless. Captain Unohana. Dustless's face instantly turned red. This was the first time in his life that he exclaimed. The figure that appeared in the steam was Unohana Retsu. She was only using a simple bathrobe to cover herself. Her skin was as clean as a gem. It was white with a hint of red. It was like the work of God. Unohana Retsu had a gentle temperament. Even if she covered her huge snow-white breasts, Dustless, who was experienced in flowers, could still tell the size of her breasts through her cleavage. Maybe it was because the ground was too slippery. Unohana Retsu was swaying as she walked. Dustless's old eyes followed Unohana Retsu's movements. What's there to see, Chen-kun? Unohana Retsu asked curiously as she looked at Dustless's red face. She didn't expect Dustless to be looking at her. After all, they had been together for some time. Unohana Retsu understood Dustless's temperament. He wasn't a pervert. Being asked like this, Dustless returned to normal in the blink of an eye and was incomparably calm. Nothing. Are you asking me why I was distracted? Actually, I was thinking about Sosuke Aizen's motive. Although he looked calm, Dustless's eyes were rolling. He was shouting in his heart, "Why didn't you tell me earlier that you're going to the hot springs when you're injured?" Chapter 1006. It was no wonder that Dustless recovered so quickly. After all, in Soul Society, it was quite common for men and women to bathe together. However, even though bathing together is popular in Soul Street, the captains of Soul Society don't seem to have this unique skill. As Dustless's thoughts spun, a small ripple appeared on the surface of the water. When he looked up, Unohua Lai's entire body had been buried under the water while Dustless was distracted. Gulp. After taking a deep breath, Dustless looked away and calmly laid back down in the water. There's no need to care about this. I'd be an idiot if I didn't take advantage of it. After all, I'm not the one losing out. Dustless comforted himself. Even Unohua Lai, who was a female, did not care about such things. There was no need for him to care about what the world thought of him. Hee. A sly smile appeared on Dustless's face as he looked at Unohua Lai's snow-white skin and said, "Captain Unohua, why don't you let me help you scrub your back? I'm very familiar with this." Dustless's female friends in the system often asked him to scrub their backs, so he was very familiar with this skill. There's no need for that. Hearing this, Unohua Lai's eyes flashed with awkwardness as her face turned red. She immediately shook her head and refused. "Yong-in can do this. You're a captain now, so there's no need to trouble you. When I was the vice captain, I didn't see you asking me to scrub your back." Dustless complained in his heart, but he kept his mouth shut. Since Unohua Lai did not like it, there was no need for him to force it. Being too shameless would only make Unohua Lai feel annoyed. Looking up, Unohua Lai tried her best to look natural. However, in the eyes of Dustless, who was very observant, it was full of flaws. It's a bit early to talk about this. Withdrawing his gaze from Unohua Lai's delicate body, Wuchen's fiery heart calmed down. His clear eyes returned to their usual calmness. Dustless quietly leaned against the side of the indoor hot spring, thinking about what had happened recently. Wandless Empire, Sosuke Aizen, and Hueco Mundo are all hostile forces. After calming down, Dustless's body emitted an icy cold air. The originally warm spring water instantly became extremely cold. Jun, unknowingly, Unohua Lai leaned over with a natural expression. Perhaps it was because he was too engrossed in his thoughts, but Dustless did not notice Unohua's approach. He only raised his head when he felt someone touch him. "Captain Uno Flower, you?" Dustless's body twitched uncontrollably. Soon after, he calmly asked, "Yes, could it be that something happened?" In fact, because they were so close, Dustless could clearly see the cleavage that Unohua was covering. That soul-stirring curve caused Dustless to feel dizzy. His thoughts were a little hazy, and he couldn't speak clearly. We've known each other for so long. You can call me Lai from now on. Unhua Lai said gently with a refreshing smile. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with hope. He was disappointed that he was happy for nothing. He thought that Unhua Lai was throwing herself at him, and his heart was extremely disappointed. I know, Unhua Lai. Dustless sighed and returned to normal. He looked at the ceiling in boredom. His lifeless eyes were extremely depressed. What are you disappointed about, Chen Jun? Unhua Lai asked curiously. Hearing this, Dustless rolled his eyes and said, Of course it's. Looking at Unhua Lai's smiling face, Dustless tactfully shut his mouth. If he said that he was peeking at Unhua Lai's beauty, he would definitely be silenced by this first sword 8. Dustless closed his eyes. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with Unhua Lai, he felt a cold touch on his back that caused him to be stunned. Turning around, he saw Unhua Lai. Her face was flushed, and she was trying her best to remain calm. However, her fingers that were touching Dustless's back were still trembling. Captain Unhua is scrubbing my back? A strange ripple appeared in Dustless's heart. He immediately calmed down. Unhua Lai's performance was very normal. If he overreacted, it would mean that he was hiding something. Those people are really unbelievable. They can control 2 powers at the same time. Moreover, they are the powers of 2 opposing races. Unhua Lai said suspiciously. Her voice was filled with astonishment. At the same time, she did not stop what she was doing. She carefully scrubbed Dustless's back. Her technique was very unfamiliar, and she did not control her strength well. It was probably her first time doing this. Even so, Dustless still enjoyed it. There is nothing strange about this. Dustless's expression was extremely calm. The combination of Shinigami and Hollow broke the boundary between 2 races. This method was very similar to the Uchiha clan and Senju clan. They were clearly 2 opposing races, but when they fused together, they could step into a whole new realm. It was as if the heavens were deliberately teasing the world. Sometimes, only when 2 opposing powers fuse together can one enter a higher dimension. Lai, you came to me for this answer, right? Dustless turned his head and looked at Unhua Lai with a smile. Although Unhua Lai was usually very gentle, this was only on the surface. In fact, she was also an arrogant woman who pursued the extreme. Actually, there is another race that has more advantages than the combination of Shinigami and Hollow. Dustless suddenly said while fiddling with the water like a child. There is such a mysterious existence in this world? Unhua Lai was puzzled. Of course there is. Dustless gave an affirmative answer. Immediately, a mysterious figure appeared on the water surface. He was wearing a white robe and held a transparent bow in his hand. They are destroyers. Chapter 1007. Hearing this, Unhua Retsu fell silent and stopped what she was doing. Chen Jun, how did you know about such a secret? Unhua Retsu could not understand. Almost all information about the war from 1,000 years ago had been concealed by the Goti I-13 and Central Room 46. Wuxia actually knew the secret behind it. She was really puzzled. There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall. The war 1,000 years ago affected the entire Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the main world. Do you think it's possible to erase all traces, Retsu? Dustless asked, ignoring Unhua Retsu's question. After pausing for a moment, Dustless continued, the current 12th Division is still conducting experiments on Quincy. Even if I wanted to avoid it, I would have heard about it. 12th Division? Captain Ye? So that's how it is. Hearing this, Unhua Retsu gave a bitter smile before helplessly sighing. It's just as you said. Quincy has more advantages than any other race. Death gods needed a long time to accumulate strength, and after reaching a bottleneck, they could only be like Captain Ye, using a long time to accumulate strength. Voids, on the other hand, had their bottleneck by devouring each other. Vasto Lord was their final destination. Quincy, on the other hand, was a cheating tool. They didn't need much spiritual pressure because Quincy could directly absorb spiritual power from the outside world to satisfy their own needs. Their advantages were self-evident. This shouldn't be the reason for the war 1,000 years ago. Death gods shouldn't be so narrow-minded. Destroying Quincy because of jealousy was too absurd. If they killed Quincy just because he was talented, it wouldn't make sense. It would be too much of a joke. Of course not. The main problem is that they have an extremely evil king. Unohua Retsu said in a deep voice. When she talked about that king, her voice trembled slightly. Evidently, she had a deep impression of that so-called king. Hearing this, Dustless understood who Unohua Retsu was talking about. A ferocious-looking man immediately appeared in his mind. Quincy only had one king. Yawach. What's the king's name? Dustless asked, feigning ignorance. His name is Yawach. In the end, Unohua Lai said king's name. Soon after she said in a serious tone, that man is not only powerful, but his abilities are also world-shaking, toppling the common sense of the world. Dustless gently nodded when he heard this. He had some understanding of the Great War 1,000 years ago. Although the Grim Reaper won in the end, it was a Pyrrhic victory. It was the kind of victory where he had to sacrifice himself to kill the enemy. Some of Yawach's abilities were even more powerful than his. What happened to that man in the end? He was probably killed by the head captain. Dustless asked deliberately. In fact, Yawach had been completely defeated at that time. But for some reason, Yamamoto only made Yawach lose his strength, heartbeat, and consciousness. In short, Old Man Yamamoto only sealed Yawach in the end and did not kill him. The reason was unclear. Unohua Lai paused and thought back to 1,000 years ago. She then bitterly smiled and said, I don't know what Genryusai was thinking at that time, but I still remember Genryusai's helpless expression. It was as if he could kill Yawach but couldn't. So that's how it is. That Old Man Yamamoto did it on purpose. Hearing this, Dustless suddenly smiled. Before, he had some vague guesses about Yawach's background. Now, Unohua Lai's words confirmed Dustless's guess. There was no doubt that Old Man Yamamoto had defeated Yawach 1,000 years ago. At that time, he clearly had the ability to kill Yawach, but the head captain only made Yawach lose his strength, heartbeat, and consciousness. In the end, he did not kill Yawach and only sealed him. Although the head captain usually looked very gentle, like a neighbor's grandfather, the Gotii 13's predecessor was, in essence, an assassin group. Sealing Yawach was the complete opposite of the head captain's style. When facing a big threat, he would always want to get rid of it as soon as possible. He would never let Yawach go so easily, and he would not let a disaster that destroyed Soul Society live like in the future. Therefore, according to Dustless's guess, it was not that the head captain did not want to kill Yawach, but that he had no choice but to seal him. Maybe that bastard Yawach is also a part of the Soul King's body. That's why Old Man Yamamoto was so cautious. He only made Yawach's strength, consciousness, and heartbeat disappear, and then sealed him. Dustless speculated. Maybe killing Yawach was equivalent to killing the Soul King. Although the whole world would not collapse and disappear because of this, there must be some kind of big problem that could not be solved that forced head captain Yamamoto to not kill him. Chen-kun, this kind of thing should not be told to outsiders. Unohana continued to scrub Dustless's back. She patted his shoulder and whispered in Dustless's ear. No matter what the truth is, Yawach is an extremely dangerous man. However, the head captain sealed him. At the end, Unohana let out a sigh of relief. It had been a long time since she last felt relaxed. Sealed? That's just the head captain's bluff. I'm afraid it won't be long before Yawach regains consciousness. Dustless shook his head and stretched. He did not want to think too much about it. After all, it was just a guess. But one thing was for sure. Yawach wanted to devour the Soul King, and Dustless also had the same idea. Therefore, Dustless wanted to know everything about Yawach. Chapter 1008. About half an hour later, the gentle Unohana Retsu stood up and moved her sore shoulders. Sit down, Retsu. I have many things to ask you. Chen Xiaobei pulled Unohana Retsu to the side. Both of them were wearing simple bath towels, but there was no awkwardness when they talked. The atmosphere was very relaxed. What a pity. Getting her is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Dustless glanced at Unohana Retsu from the corner of his eyes and smacked his lips. At first, he was very narcissistic and thought that Unohana Retsu was here to seduce him. Who would have thought that she would just help him wipe his back and nothing else? She didn't even have any intentions in that area. Dustless was happy for nothing and felt very depressed. Chinkuan, do you still remember East Sage's pearl before she betrayed us? After a moment of silence, Unohana Retsu asked calmly. Dustless's heart sank. He naturally knew what pearl Unohana Retsu was talking about. Hogyoku. Urahara Kisuk had also researched that thing. I heard that it was used to break the boundary between Shinigami and Nihility. However, after Urahara Kisuk betrayed Soul Society, the pearl he researched also disappeared. Unohana Retsu said something shocking. Retsu. Do you mean? A bad idea popped up in his heart. Wu Chen asked in a roundabout way, hoping to fish out some information. The pearl Urahara Kisuk had researched was used to break the boundary between Shinigami and Nihility. Its purpose was the same as East Sage's, but they both seemed to have failed. So, Unohana Retsu's expression became more serious. She said seriously, if it's possible, what if the two failed pearls fused together? Puchi! Dustless spat out saliva when he heard this. He looked at Unohana Retsu as if he had seen a ghost. Where did the perfect Hogyoku come from? It was created by the fusion of Aizen's Hogyoku and Urahara Kisuk's pearl. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew about it. However, it was unscientific for Unohana Retsu to know about it. Did the head captain tell you all this? Dustless raised his eyebrows and asked. Unohua shook her head and did not mince her words. This is just my guess. You just said that only by combining the power of void and death can one reach a higher level. That's why I came up with this idea. If two orbs with opposite attributes fuse, perhaps a miracle can happen. Those are your exact words. Dustless was stunned and speechless for a moment. He couldn't help but complain in his heart, if I knew your IQ was so terrible, I wouldn't have said those words. I would have left them to rot in my stomach. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. Dustless urged, if that's the case, we should immediately send an expeditionary force to Hueco Mundo to capture that crazy bastard East deity, lest he does something irreversible. Flattening Hueco Mundo and killing all of Aizen's minions was Dustless's long-cherished wish. Crazy bastard. Unohana Retsu rolled her eyes at Dustless and said in a bad mood, most of the crazy things he did were forced by you. However, I do need to inform you on Lu Sai. 10 days later, Dustless finally stepped out of the 4th Division. As soon as he stepped out of the 4th Division's shooting range, a 3-meter-tall man blocked Dustless's path. Head Captain, it's a sunny day and you're not patrolling. Instead, you're blocking the 4th Division's path to welcome me. How can I accept such a warm welcome? I'm flattered. Dustless crossed his arms and said with a smile. Although he said that, his face was filled with murderous intent. This guy must be here for East Deity. This old man's 7th Division is the Inner Courts Guard team, responsible for the safety of Quiet Soul Society. I was supposed to deal with East Deity that day, but who knew he wouldn't let you go? Here, Zhuozhan's voice was filled with melancholy, but then he remembered East Deity's character and said coldly, this old man and East Deity have known each other for 100 years, I know his character. He wouldn't betray Soul Society. There must be a reason for his sudden betrayal. Wu Chen's face suddenly condensed a cold light when he heard that. He sneered and said, hidden trouble? What a joke. A rotten peach will always be a rotten peach. East Deity's betrayal is an indisputable fact. Since you trust East Deity so much, go to Hueco Mundo and ask him himself. I still have things to do. Goodbye. With that, Dustless walked past him. Stop. This old man didn't allow you to leave. Soul Society's only friend had betrayed him, and Zhuozhan was already furious. Now that Wu Chen ignored him, he immediately pulled out his Zanpakuto in anger. Clang clang clang, the Zanpakuto's cold light was aimed at Dustless. Zhuozhan's tone was full of hostility. This old man's duty is to protect Quiet Soul Society. Since you fought with East Deity in Quiet Soul Society that day, you must report the result to me. Dustless's footsteps slowed down, revealing half of his cold face. He said sarcastically, so that's how it is. After beating around the bush, in the end, you just want to ask me if I killed East Deity, right? Don't change the subject. This is official business. You must report the details to me, then I will report it to the head captain. Zhuozhan said matter-of-factly. Report it to you? Fixing his bone-piercing eyes on Zhuozhan, who was wearing a mask, Dustless taunted him mercilessly. You're just a bear. You want me to report the battle to you? Who do you think you are? Your hands have reached too far. This kind of thing is none of your business. Chapter 1009. Dustless didn't like this stinky bear at all. Sometimes, he would just do his job half-heartedly. But when it came to matters that had nothing to do with him, he just had to interfere. You have to report East Deity's situation to me. This is part of my job. It has nothing to do with personal relationships. Zuozhan said with a determined look. East Deity? He is definitely not the kind of person who would betray Soul Society for no reason. I see. After talking for a while, Dustless finally understood what he meant. East Deity wouldn't betray Soul Society for no reason, would he? Are you implying that I forced him to do so? Humph. Zuozhan snorted and didn't reply. Obviously that was what he meant. Sorry, I don't have time to chat with you. That's all. If you have any complaints, you can complain to the head captain. Dustless waved his hand and left Zuozhan alone. Bastard! How dare you? Do you really think I can't do anything to you? Zuozhan was so angry that he trembled. He was ignored again and again. He wanted to calm down, but it was too difficult. Visible ripples appeared in the void around him. They were as magnificent as the waves of the sea. Strange energy waves surged out of Zuozhan's body. How dare you show off your spiritual pressure to me? You're not even as good as my vice-captain. The invisible ripples spread to Dustless's body. His hair stood on end. Dustless turned his head and sneered. You're such a lousy captain. You must have joined the Goatee I-13 through the back door of the head captain. Do you want to try? Zuozhan asked coldly. Then the sky darkened, and a shadow of a few 100 meters tall appeared. It was a ferocious giant with a blade. It was completely composed of spiritual pressure, and its aura was monstrous. It looked down on Wuxia on the ground. Seeing this, Dustless raised his head and glanced at the black shadow. He curled his lips in disdain and said casually, It's just an empty shell. In fact, it's just as fragile as a blockhead like you. It can be broken with one poke. Golden spiritual pressure overflowed from his body. Dustless was about to teach Zuozhan a lesson when a beautiful figure walked out from the 4th Division. He had clearly taken a step forward, but in an instant, he had flown 100 steps away. Captain Uno Flower. Zuozhan lowered his voice. He wasn't the only one who was afraid of the captain of Uno Flower. Almost every captain and vice-captain of Soul Society was afraid of her. Only a weirdo like Dustless and Unohua had fun together. Everyone else stayed away from them. This is a private matter between me and him. It's best that Captain Uno Flower doesn't interfere. This is the 4th Division. If we fight, it's inevitable that we'll implicate the powerless medical personnel. Zuozhan was still unwilling to back down when he thought of the relationship between him and Dong Senyao. His scarlet eyes stared at Dustless fiercely. If it wasn't for him, none of this would have happened. Captain Zuozhan, are you threatening me? Unohua smiled gently. But this time, it was different from before. Her entire being was dark and gloomy. Her laughter sounded like the screams of ghosts. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zuozhan was shocked. He felt a chill down his spine. A dense murderous aura was quietly staring at him. It was as if he would be killed on the spot if he did anything wrong. The instincts of beasts were sharp. Zuozhan was drenched in cold sweat. He knew what was good for him and kept his Zanpakuto. The faint shadow in the sky also disappeared. You bastard! Are you really the captain of the 11th Division? Don't tarnish the name of Jianba. Come at me if you have the guts. Don't hide behind a woman. If you're a man, come out and fight me. Zuozhan, who was unwilling to give up, roared loudly, feeling extremely aggrieved. I'm sorry. I just came out from the 4th Division. My body is still weak. I'm not fit to fight. Wu Chen chuckled, completely ignoring Zuozhan's disdain. He provoked him in a strange way. I just want to see your face when you want to hit me but can't. The sadder you are, the happier I will be. You! He lifted his huge finger and pointed it at Wu Chen while trembling. The flames on the left side of the formation were attacking his heart. If it wasn't for Unohua Lai, who was an unfathomable existence, he would have killed Wu Chen with his sword. This kid's poisonous mouth was even more infuriating. I like to live off women. If you think you're strong enough, you can ignore Anohu as captain and come at me directly. Dustless shrugged and made an expression that said, I'm not going to run away. Bastard. If you have the guts, come out and fight me face to face. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Zhuozhan kept scratching his head. This was the only thing he could think of. He could not think of any other curse words to deal with Dustless. Compared to Dustless who knew how to curse, he was still 1,000 miles away. Boring. Goodbye, Lai. Seeing that Zhuozhan was at a loss of words, Dustless lost all interest. He cupped his hands at Unohua and thanked her. Then, he disappeared along with his spiritual pressure. What a coward! Seeing Dustless leaving, Zhuozhan said angrily, Why is Unohua protecting him? A coward like him is not fit to be the captain. If you didn't protect him, I would have killed him. Unohua pursed her lips and smiled. Then she explained, Captain Zhuozhan, you must be mistaken. The reason why I didn't leave is not to protect Lord Chen, but to protect you in the dark. It was precisely because of Unohua Retsu's presence that Dustless did not choose to make a move. Instead, he was toying with left formation like a child. If he really did make a move, the 7th Division would have already started preparing for their captain's funeral. Although they were both team leaders, according to Unohua Retsu's estimations, if Zhuozhan were to go up against the unfathomable Dustless, he would probably be instantly killed by the black coffin descending from the sky. Chapter 10:10. Unohua Retsu was both angry and amused. She thought that Zhuozhan knew his place, but he thought that Dustless was scared. Humph, that brat has only been a death god for half a year, but I've been a death god for dozens of times longer than him. I was even personally trained by Lord Yuanlu Sai. Zhuozhan said proudly. There were only a few people who were taught by the head captain, and he was one of them. He did have the right to be arrogant. Anyway, don't go find Chen Jun. The head captain doesn't want Quiet Soul Society to have internal strife. After glancing at the hopeless left team, Unohua Lai turned around and entered the 4th Division. Before she left, she couldn't help but say, Chen Jun is a very scary, but also very cute person. I'm on his side. Captain Unohua. What do you mean? Zhuozhan was taken aback and asked in an unfriendly tone. After being a captain for dozens of years, he naturally knew what Unohua meant. It was a direct threat. In other words, if there was a war, Unohua Retsu would side with Dustless. It's exactly what you think. Captain Zhuozhan, the 4th Division still has things to do. Goodbye. Without turning around, Unohua left Zhuozhan with her back. Being trained by the head captain was indeed something to be proud of. However, if he thought that he was superior and looked down on everyone else, it would be a joke. The head captain was the strongest death god in the past 1,000 years, but he was not invincible. Bastard! Seeing this, Zhuozhan's heart was filled with anger, and a sense of grievance and resentment arose spontaneously. Today seemed to be the most unlucky day in his life. He was ignored and slapped in the face again and again. His rough and thick face turned purple and black. Time quickly passed. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. The 1st Division held a captain's meeting as usual. I've decided to send an expeditionary force into Hueco Mundo to find traces of East Deity and capture him. The head captain opened his turbid old eyes. They were not as unfocused as before. His gaze was as sharp as a knife and as sharp as an eagle's. It was very threatening. The head captain said in an imposing manner, if East Deity is the culprit behind everything, he must be arrested and brought to justice. Hearing this, Dustless looked at Unohua Retsu. This was probably the result of her discussion with the head captain. Sir Head Captain, I'm willing to go to Hueco Mundo. Zhuozhan was the first to volunteer. It's not suitable for you to go to Hueco Mundo. Everyone knows about your relationship with Captain East Deity. If you don't see it, then it will be bad. Hearing this, Zhuozhan's face darkened. He looked at the source of the voice and found that it was Wuchen. Don't slander me. If I'm not suitable, do you think you're suitable? Zhuozhan sneered. He didn't have a good impression of Dustless. Hearing this, Wu Chen smiled calmly and walked out of the group of captains. He also volunteered to fight, saying, everyone knows about my conflict with Eastern Deity. The most suitable person for this expedition to Hueco Mundo is undoubtedly me. No. Aizen Sokiai stood out and said, "You're the captain of the 11th Division. If you leave, who will be in charge of the Great Void from Soul Society and the Modern Realm? I personally recommend you to be the captain. In the end, you're just afraid that I'll kill your dogs. You'll have a better chance if you find a soft-hearted Zuozhen." Dustless disdained. At the same time, he organized his thoughts. Just as he was about to argue, the head captain spoke first. "The captain of the 11th Division is indeed not suitable to go to Hueco Mundo, but," Yamamoto nodded calmly and said, "East Deity is about to betray Soul Society. The 7th Division is now in a slump. Since Captain Dustless wants to go to Hueco Mundo, then transfer to the 7th Division and become the captain. If I transfer to the 7th Division and become the new captain, then who will be the captain of the 11th Division, Sword 8? Dustless guessed in his heart. He subconsciously looked at Old Man Yamamoto. Although he hid it very well, the pride in Old Man Yamamoto's eyes was clearly seen by Dustless. Could it be that cunning old man? Dustless instantly understood the head captain's intention. He cursed in his heart, "If I'm not wrong, Zaraki should be the one to replace me. I didn't expect him to take advantage of me in the end." Dustless shook his head and sighed. The head captain's next words confirmed his guess. Captain Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division and replaced by the original vice-captain, Zaraki. His strength is obvious to all. He is completely qualified to be the new Sword 8. The head captain's old voice revealed a touch of dominance. "I agree with both hands and feet," Dustless said indifferently. "I also agree," Unohana Retsu followed. "The vice-captain of the 11th Division? That Ryatsu monster. Although he doesn't know Bankai, his rough Ryatsu is indeed suitable to be a captain. Plus, his vitality is very strong." "If that's the case, I also agree," Yukitake Fukaku said. Okatake Jushiru also agreed. Old Man Yamamoto was his teacher, so he naturally had to support him at this time. Seeing this, the head captain smiled with satisfaction. He waved his hand and said in a powerful voice, "If that's the case, Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division, and Zaraki will be the new Sword 8. The mission of going to Hueco Mundo will be handed over to the 7th Division." Dustless was indifferent. After all, as long as he was the captain, it didn't matter which division it was. He didn't expect the so-called members to be of any help anyway. At the crucial moment, he still had to rely on himself. Others were unreliable. Chapter 10-11. Sosuke Aizen's expression didn't change, but his heart was filled with despair. There was no doubt that Dustless's strength was enough to capture East Sensei. Once he was captured, Aizen's plan would fail. What's worse, he would be exposed. Aizen's brain raced as he tried to think of a solution, but he couldn't think of a suitable one. He could only watch Dustless's back as he left. At least tell East Sensei about this, let him hide for a while. Aizen made a decision. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Dustless stepped into Hueco Mundo as he wished. The first impression of this barren land was that it was stingy. Kakaka. In the boundless void, a blinding white light suddenly flashed. Then, a door that connected to a different dimension appeared. Then, a figure rushed out from it. "Is this the Expeditionary Army's camp?" Looking down at the Expeditionary Army encampment below, Dustless muttered to himself. His body shook as he landed on the ground. At the same time, several figures rushed over. "Hello, I am the captain of Hueco Mundo's Expeditionary Army. My name is Embroidered Shell." A middle-aged man wearing a death armor came over and said politely to Dustless, "Isn't this guy Embroidered Shell? He replaced Ikamaru Jin's 3rd Division captain after Ikamaru Jin and Aizen betrayed Soul Society? He's not a good guy either." Dustless confirmed this person's origin and identity. Embroidered Shell gave off a similar feeling to Aizen. His first impression was that he was gentle and polite. He didn't have the arrogance of a Death Expeditionary Army captain. Instead, he was as approachable as an ordinary person. In fact, this was all a disguise. This guy was just a poisonous snake that hid his tongue. If he exposed a flaw, he would open his bloody mouth and deliver a fatal blow. In short, he was the same as Aizen, shrewd and scheming. Dustless went straight to the point. Captain Tian Bei, the head captain should have informed you beforehand. My purpose for coming here is that East Deity wants to. The heavenly shell embroidery assistant nodded when she heard this. Shortly after, she laughed loudly and said, "You don't have to worry about this. Our expeditionary army has already detected the traces of the Eastern Deity Fortress." However, at this point, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant scratched her head awkwardly and sighed helplessly. "However, I only managed to find traces of him. His abilities are terrifyingly strong, and I am no match for him. Sigh, it's all my fault for being so useless that the Soul Society had to send someone. This is very normal. East Deity Yu's strength is beyond Death God's knowledge. There are only a handful of people in Soul Society who can fight him head-on. Captain Tian Bei, you don't have to belittle yourself." Dustless glanced at the heavenly shell embroidered assistant. His expression was natural. He had expected this. With the half-completed Hogyoku, East Deity's strength would increase tremendously. The only thing that puzzled him was that it had only been half a month since East Deity Fortress was kicked out of Soul Society. In the vast Hueco Mundo and with the limited manpower of the Expeditionary Army, it had only taken half a month to find traces of East Deity Fortress. This efficiency was unreliable. However, I still have to congratulate Captain Tian Bei. East Deity Fortress is now an important criminal of Soul Society. If you capture him, it will definitely be a great achievement. Dustless cupped his hands and congratulated. One would not hit a smiling person. No matter what happened to the heavenly shell embroidered assistant in the future, at the very least, she was still on Soul Society's side. It is my duty to serve Soul Society until the day I die, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant said solemnly. Immediately after, she pulled Dustless to the Expeditionary Army's encampment and said, "You have traveled thousands of miles from Soul Society to Hueco Mundo. Although the Expeditionary Army has very few resources of all kinds, a welcome meal is absolutely indispensable." Dustless did not refuse and followed the heavenly shell embroidered assistant to the Expeditionary Army's encampment. The only thing that made him uncomfortable and strange was that he had only passed through a world crossing gate to reach Hueco Mundo. As for the thousands of miles, in the evening, a banquet was held at the Expeditionary Army's encampment, which was much more abundant than the usual monotonous meals. Most of the so-called Expeditionary Army were abandoned people of Soul Society. Most of them were exiled sinners and criminals. Soul Society would never care about them and would even forget them directly. This was a group of abandoned people. That night, perhaps because he drank too much, Dustless entered a dream early, or perhaps because of the sudden change of environment, Dustless was a little uncomfortable and his head was dizzy all day. Boom! Boom! At midnight, a loud explosion resounded through the starry sky within 100 miles. The destructive fluctuations were inhumane and almost wiped out the entire Expeditionary Army's encampment in an instant. "I've just arrived and there are already great voids coming to my door. Why are they not giving me face?" Caught off guard, Dustless was buried in the sand pit and it took him a long time to wake up from his daze. Then he saw his hockey spread out like water ripples, and the great voids around him did not let him go. A Vasto Lord, and a few Ajuchas. In addition there are a lot of Jillian. Such an exaggerated lineup should not be directed at the Expeditionary Army. Since it was not directed at the Expeditionary Army, the target could only be Dustless, a newcomer. Eisen, that traitor, told Dongsen in advance that he wanted me to come to Hueco Mundo, so he sent Vasto Lord to plot against me. Dustless whispered, and the sky suddenly turned golden. Whoosh! When the mysterious Vasto Lord noticed that Dustless was still alive, he casually shot out a huge golden void flash. Due to its power, it directly dyed the dark night into a dazzling day. In a trance, Dustless saw a female great voids with long golden hair. Chapter 10-12. So it's her. What a pity. You Vasto Lord were born with the curse of fate. You're just pawns used by Eisen Sosuke. Ignoring the void flash, Dustless's body glowed with a bright light as he dashed out at a speed beyond any creature's comprehension. Boom! 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 The huge void flash created a huge crater in the ground. A large part of the Silver Desert was scorched. All life forms caught in the blast were annihilated. It must be an illusion. The blonde void muttered to herself. She suddenly felt a flash of light pass by her shoulder. When she tried to sense it, it disappeared. Now that she thought about it, it must have been an illusion. How strange. You should be called Hellable. Now you've become a raid. How shocking. It seems that East Senpai has been driven crazy by me. He's using the half-finished Hogyoku to raid you. A ghostly whisper came from behind her. Hellable's expression changed as she turned around. Death God. Hellable glared at Dustless and clenched her fists. She turned to look at the scorched land. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. She was hit by the void flash. How could she be unharmed? This was cheating. Don't worry. I won't kill you. Dustless chuckled. He could see that Hellable's blonde hair was covered in sweat. Her vigilance was clear. East Senpai ordered you to come, right? Aizen was still in Soul Society. Only East Senpai could order Hellable. Humph, I have no right to tell you that. Holding the sharp bone sword, Hellable said stubbornly, Death God and voids are natural enemies. It's normal for me to kill you. No one ordered me. I'm a Vasto Lord. There's no one in Hueco Mundo who can order me around. You're quite stubborn. Dustless couldn't help but feel sorry for Hellable. From the beginning to the end, she was just a pawn of Aizen. The most melodramatic thing was that in the future, Aizen thought that Hellable had no value and instantly killed her with his blade. She was a synonym for tragedy. Ring turn. After the cold shout, Hellable was nowhere to be seen. Even though I don't know why, it seems like I was only able to escape Void Flash's attack by sheer luck. Hellable appeared on Dustless's right. Seeing that he didn't even notice her existence, she sneered and swung her sharp bone sword. Whoosh! Whoosh! Because Hellable had used too much strength, her sword was covered in a layer of sharpness. She swung it mercilessly at Dustless's head. Void Walkers were cruel and violent, and Hellable was no exception to her enemies. Clang clang clang, dazzling sparks splashed in the air. Hellable was stunned. Her eyes widened as she looked at Dustless in a daze. You caught my slash with your bare hands? Harabelle said in shock, her voice trembling. Dustless Eagle's bony little hand easily grabbed her sharp, serrated blade. It was as easy as grabbing a fire stick. It was exceptionally easy. How is this possible? He's just the captain of the Grim Reaper. Logically speaking, a Vasto Lord should be stronger than a captain-level Grim Reaper. But why is this happening now? Hellable muttered to herself in disbelief. Due to the excessive shock, her proud snowy peaks were undulating, swaying at a soul-stirring angle. Looking at the calm Dustless, Hellable realized that her brain, which she usually relied on, was not enough today. Looking at his cold eyes, Hellable suddenly realized that she had returned to the time hundreds of years ago, becoming an insignificant void of the lowest level. Gulp. Hellable made a rare noise. Then, her beautiful eyes shone with a fierce light. The haze was swept away, and the strength in her hand increased by several times. She thought that she could cut off Dustless's arm, but what happened next killed her. Crack crack crack. A crisp cracking sound followed. Obviously, Hellable's unreserved attack had dealt a blow to her optimism. However, Hellable was not happy. Oh, I'm sorry for breaking your weapon, Dustless said apologetically as he looked at the crack on the white weapon. The cracked bone weapon was the great sword that had accompanied Hellable for many years. What kind of monster is this guy? Seeing that, Hellable immediately retreated in a flash. She stared at Dustless's fist in disbelief. She was stunned. Even with her mental fortitude, she could not help but be stunned by such a shocking scene. She lost her mind and thought, Vasto Lord? Do you think that will change anything? In my eyes, Jillian and Vasto Lord are the same. It's meaningless. Vasto Lord was indeed able to crush the captain, but he had to know who he was dealing with first. If it was a veteran captain like Unohana Lai or Old Man Yamamoto, the one being crushed would be a great void like Vasto Lord. I once chased East Deity Yao out of Soul Society. His strength far surpasses yours. Do you know what this means? Dustless sneered and continued. He only sent you to test me. It's best if you can kill me, but it's fine if you can't. At most, you'll be killed. You're just a pawn anyway. Not only you, but the other great voids and the so-called Vasto Lord are all pawns. Right now, you belong to the category of being abandoned. Chapter 10:13. Hearing this, Hellable stared at Dustless. She did not mention anything about Aizen and East Sensei. Little girl, do you think I don't know who the mastermind is? Naive. Dustless could not help but laugh. Ordinary people might not know, but he was an invader from the third dimension. He knew everything about Aizen, East Sensei, and Jin Ikamaru. Remember, I'm not an abandoned pawn. Otherwise, that lord would have killed me long ago. Hellable said coldly. Her tone was firm. She believed Aizen and the others. Hearing this, Dustless could not help but laugh. He mocked, "Idiot, don't you understand the situation? You're just sending yourself to death. This is called borrowing someone else's knife to kill someone." Whoosh. Done talking, Dustless turned into a gale and wreaked havoc out. A violent storm rolled up behind him, and he instantly disappeared without a trace. So fast. Hellable's pupils constricted as she felt a fatal threat. At the same time, she was furious. Dustless had charged over so openly. Clearly, he did not take her seriously. Just like the provocation just now, in Dustless's eyes, Vasto Lord was Jillian. I'll play with you until the end. Let's see how strong you are. Golden spiritual pressure erupted as Hellable unhesitatingly returned to her blade. The difference between them was too great. She could only use her trump card to deal with Dustless. Conquer him, Emperor Mermaid Empress. After returning to her blade, Hellable was clearly different from before. Her aura skyrocketed, and a terrifying tide of energy flowed out of her body. It was endless, wave after wave, like an endless sea. Then, something even stranger happened. Crack, crack, crack. Icy spiritual pressure swept out, freezing everything in its path. With Hellable as the center, everything within a few hundred meters turned into a land of ice. This kind of trick. Don't use it on me again. With a stern expression, Dustless gathered light under his feet, and he fiercely landed. Light speed kick. Boom, boom. With a loud boom, the ground around them trembled violently, and cracks appeared without any pattern. The ice continent that Hellable had painstakingly created was instantly turned into nothing. This guy. What kind of monster is he? Hellable's expression was abnormally ugly. Her face was covered in frost, and she was surrounded by cold air. She was like a goddess that had walked out of ice and snow, isolated from the world. Even a docile sheep would fly into a rage after being repeatedly slapped in the face by someone. Not to mention that Hellable was a ferocious shark. This is the price for infuriating me. With a shout, Hellable aimed her Zanpakuto at Dustless. The Ryatsu in her body was affected by Aizen's brainwashing, surging like a surging river. Hellable was furious, and desperately injected spiritual pressure from his body into the Zanpakuto. Buzz buzz buzz. The dense spiritual pressure gathered on the Zanpakuto, and the entire blade was shining. It trembled slightly and emitted a clear sound as it was enveloped by the high-density spiritual pressure. Die! With a cold expression, Hellable remembered what Dustless had done. She raised her Zanpakuto and mercilessly swung it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A huge golden slash whizzed out, and anything that stood in its way was annihilated under this blade. It carried Hellable's hatred as it slashed toward Dustless. Vasto Lord, you're not strong, but you have quite the temper. With a contemptuous smile, Dustless used an unparalleled move with a snap of his fingers. Hado 63. Thunder Roar Cannon. The same golden flash shot out, leaving a straight afterimage in the sky. Idiot. You want to cancel out my move? Although you can do it, Hado 63 is too weak. The difference between the two of us is like heaven and earth. Hellable sneered. She had fought with the Grim Reaper before, so she had some understanding of Kido. To cancel out her attack, one would need at least Hado 90 and above. Looking at Dustless, Hellable's lips twitched, and she was about to give him a good beating. What happened next made her view of the world collapse instantly. Boom boom boom. A deafening explosion came from the sky, and the dark night sky shone brightly for a moment. Looking up, two powerful moves intertwined. Hellable's attack was obviously at a disadvantage, and it was forcefully torn apart by the golden sphere. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air came, and the aura of death rushed toward her. Hellable's eyes widened as she saw the golden sphere coming toward her. How is this possible? How did this guy do it? The Hado 63 of the other Grim Reapers would have a hard time destroying the steel skin of a greater void like Vasto Lord. Hellebel, who was shocked, immediately flicked out a ray of light that could destroy the world. Wang Su's flash. Boom, boom, boom. There was an explosion in the void, followed by a blinding light that could be seen from 1,000 meters away. The temperature in the affected area increased by hundreds of times, and even the spiritual pressure in the atmosphere was evaporated, and there was a danger of suffocation. Hellebel used her strongest void flash to cancel out Dustless's move. Do you understand now? Dustless asked indifferently without attacking, and the spiritual pressure in his body suddenly calmed down. What do you mean? Hellebel, who was panting, asked in an unfriendly manner. This woman looks like she still doesn't understand. No wonder she was used by Aizen. She's so slow that she doesn't even have a bottom line. Dustless complained in his mind, and then said seriously, I told you before, you're just sent to die. The difference in our strength is just like before. In the end, you are just an abandoned pawn to test me. Chapter 10:14. Hellebel was so angry at Dustless that her cheeks turned red, her blonde hair standing on end, and her eyes spitting fire. Shut up, Hellebel said gloomily, filled with murderous intent. However, Dustless was the kind of person who didn't know what was good for him. The more Hellebel didn't want to listen to Dustless's verbal attacks, the more he shouted. Aizen, East Sensei, and those 3 idiots, Ikamara Jin, they are all whoosh whoosh whoosh. Without waiting for Wu Chen's voice to fall, several sharp lights that wanted to pierce through him and destroy him attacked him like a rainstorm. Boring. Dustless glanced at them and closed his eyes. A transparent wall formed. Bakudo 81, sky shattering. Bang bang bang. It was just a transparent wall as thin as a cicada's wing, but it was like 2 different worlds. Dustless from the other world couldn't even touch it. It was impossible to shake him. This guy's strength is unreliable. It's hard to make any substantial progress with his attacks that are all bark and no bite. Hellebel had a headache. She used to think about what an invincible enemy looked like. Now, she finally had a clearer understanding. This narrow-minded man who liked to scold others and speak ill of others was a living specimen. You seem to be very difficult to deal with? That's true. Seeing Hellebel's confusion, Dustless smiled and teased. If you are willing to lower your head and be my spy, and snatch the half of Hogyoku from East Deity Zhao, I can let you go reluctantly. You want me to be a traitor? What nonsense are you talking about? Hellebel said stubbornly. Her tone was as calm as a mountain, as if she was saying that even if she had to die, she would die together with Dustless. Aizen's method of training his subordinates is truly admirable. Seeing this, Dustless nodded. He could naturally hear the hidden meaning in Hellebel's tone. Not to mention retreat, there was no room for negotiation. Wang Su's flash. Her slender fingers flickered and trembled. With a command, a golden beam of light covered the sky and earth. The demonic halo destroyed all living things. Everything in the world couldn't withstand a single blow from this beam of light. If a god blocked it, it would kill a god. If a Buddha blocked it, it would kill a Buddha. Stubborn. Seeing this, Wu Chen directly rushed out. He didn't attack or defend at all. He simply turned into a rainbow light and went forward as if he was courting death. Boom boom boom. Dustless, who rushed into the sky, disappeared, and his Ryatsu also disappeared permanently, as if he was blasted into nothingness. Ha ha, an intoxicating laughter burst out from Hellebel's red lips as she muttered to herself. Wang Su's flash without any defense, even Aizen-sama. But before she could be pleased with herself for a few seconds, Dustless's eccentric cocky voice directly petrified her. Sorry. I'm not Aizen. I don't know if he'll be hurt, but I definitely won't be hurt. Countless photons gathered from all directions, flashing and reforming. A handsome young man appeared, his pure white captain's feather as clean as snow. His messy hair danced in the wind, and a frivolous smile hung on his lips. He had a playful attitude toward the world. Seeing this, Hellebel spat out blood. He was hit by Void Flash, but he was unharmed. I'm the Flash. It's just a Void Flash, the light of a firefly. It's easier said than done to touch me. His indifferent eyes looked down at Hellebel, shooting out a cold light. Dustless lost his playful mood. He sensed that something was wrong. Even now, the expeditionary army had disappeared without a trace. I'll ask you one last time. Where is that bastard from East Senpai? His right hand was as terrifying as a black hole, instantly collecting a large amount of photons. The blinding light made Hellable unable to open her eyes. She could only cover her eyes with her hands. I don't know. Through the gap between her fingers, Hellable said without hesitation. The moment she said that, Dustless threw out the light in his hand coldly. Yasakani no Magatama. So. The light bullets that filled the sky rumbled down. The densely packed number of light bullets caused one's soul to tremble. 1, 2, 3. Facing this ridiculous number, Hellable became more and more desperate as she counted. Her heart was cold, and she felt powerless. Boom boom boom. Hellable unleashed her remaining Ryatsu without holding back. She knew that if she didn't do anything, the light bullets would turn her into a sieve. Puchi! The powerful water flow overflowed from the sawtooth Zanpakuto and filled the sky in just a few breaths. Broken waterfall. With a command, the water flow in the sky came back to life and was given a special power. It changed according to Hellable's will, turning into a thick water pillar that blocked all the incoming light. Invading this huge water pillar, the light in the sky seemed to have stepped into a gravity field and could no longer move forward. Vasto Lord class large void. You have such a powerful ultimate move? I can't deny that I underestimated you before. Squinting his eyes into a slit, Wuchen looked at the oncoming water column and sighed softly. The entire sky suddenly turned solemn. In order to repay you for opening my eyes, I will show you a little bit of my strength. Dustless's slightly magnetic voice was like the will of the heavens, connected to the will of the heavens, dominating the world. Soon after, the entire sky began to undergo a shocking change. An ominous deathly stillness began to spread. The entire Hueco Mundo was silent, giving Hellable the illusion that she had teleported to another time and space. In this strange field, everything was cold to her, and the entire world was her enemy. Chapter 10-15. Hellable was shocked. This was a feeling she had never felt before. Be it an illusion or an illusion, it was unforgettable. It left an indelible impression in her heart. Then the earth trembled. Violent tremors swept out like a tidal wave. Hellable was shocked to discover that an unprecedented colossus was standing in Hueco Mundo. What the hell is that? Death's Bankai? Her fluctuating tone was filled with fear. Hellable felt defeated like never before. No, it was definitely not as simple as seeing a ghost. At the very least, Hellable believed that she could fight or even destroy a so-called ghost if she encountered one. However, the towering figure in front of her made her feel as tiny and powerless as a grain of sand. She looked up at Dustless, or rather, at the entire sky. Because Dustless represented the entire sky at this moment. The super monster behind him occupied Hellable's entire eyeball. There was no such thing as the sky. There was only Dustless and the giant Buddha behind him. The entire world was under his control. This is the end. With a soft murmur, Wuchen suddenly let out a roar. Immortal technique. Wood release. True thousand hands. Avatar above head. The colossal figure hidden in the darkness revealed its ferocious appearance. The giant Buddha formed by countless giant Buddhas dragged its body forward. The earth kept shaking as if there was an earthquake. Humph. Looking at the oncoming water column, Dustless felt that it was incomparably huge before. Now, it felt like a tiny insect that could be destroyed with a snap of his fingers. Get out of my way. As Dustless' voice fell, the giant Buddha behind him immediately responded, venting out Dustless's anger. Boom boom boom, tens of thousands of arms blasted out in unison. The endless number of arms came wave after wave, causing a devastating blow to anyone. It would have been fine if the individual arms were weak. Who would have thought that every arm that flew out would be extremely powerful? When they landed on the ground, they would cause violent tremors and deep craters. The entire Hueco Mundo was smashed until it was like the surface of the moon. Bam 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 bam, attacked by the fist shadows that filled the sky. The giant water column that was showing off was instantly shattered. It turned into a downpour that nourished the dried-up Hueco Mundo. My strongest move is actually so weak? Hellable stared blankly at the bursting water. She was completely drenched. Her beautiful eyes were dull and had lost their usual luster. Now it seemed that Dustless had been playing with her all this while. Ah! What kind of stupid thing have I done to cause such a beautiful little girl to have a mental breakdown? I'm really a sinful person. Dustless sat on the head of the giant Buddha and said apologetically. You bastard! Linger, who had not spoken to Dustless for many years, could not help but jump out and say, if you really don't want to hurt her, you should just kill her. Hearing this, Wu Chen shook his finger and said with pity, kill her in seconds? How could I bear to do that? I'm not a ruthless person. Ling almost vomited blood. She's also struggled and worked hard. In order to reach Vasto Lord's level, she sacrificed hundreds of years. If I kill her without a word and don't give Hellable a chance to show herself, it's too unfair. Dustless explained as if it was the right thing to do. Linger's tone twitched as she scolded. You little brat, you're really shameless. You're clearly. In the end, Linger was speechless. She found herself speechless. Dustless's words were obviously twisted logic, but she could not find a suitable reason to refute. Killing someone without giving them a chance to spread their wings was indeed too cruel and heartless. Young girl, do you still want to resist? Dustless asked softly as he landed beside Hellable. Resist? Hellable raised her despondent eyes. Even though Dustless was right in front of her and she could reach him with her hands, but looking at the giant Buddha behind her, the Dustless in front of her was so far away that she could not touch him. I've said before that you're an abandoned pawn. Do you understand now? Dustless sat on the ground lazily. The chakra and spiritual pressure in his body had all calmed down, and the giant Buddha behind him had also disappeared. He stared at Hellable and asked. Hellable fell silent. When East Sensei wanted to send her here, she said that Dustless was just an ordinary captain. Based on the current situation, the ordinary captain that East Sensei said was not worth mentioning was now more than 100 times stronger. Moreover, Dustless's leisurely and uninteresting appearance clearly showed that he was not using his full strength. Damn East Sensei! Hellable, who understood, gritted her teeth and cursed. She clenched her fists tightly, and the veins bulged. Her entire body was filled with negative emotions that made one's scalp numb. Then, she remembered East Sensei and Aizen Sosuke, as well as Jin Ikamaru's shocking strength. A bitter self-deprecating smile appeared on Hellable's face, and she immediately deflated. She was instantly killed by Dustless. She was also instantly killed by the three of them. Moreover, she was now Dustless's captive. It's done. Seeing this, Dustless laughed inwardly. He cleared his throat and said loudly, as long as you follow me, I can help you take revenge at some point in the future. Dustless's words made Hellable see the light of dawn again. Her unfocused eyes once again became bright and spirited. Not only that. His tone was deep and filled with endless magic. Hellable also seemed to be possessed. Following Dustless's thoughts, she continued to throw out bait and said, in the future, I can help you take off the mask on your body. What Aizen Sosuke can do, I can do the same. I can even do it more perfectly than him. It's flawless. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.